Fate tested his trust in the world and the people around him. Failed. Relying on himself and studying magic every day, he went towards his goal, revenge for his loved ones. What takes others years to study, he masters in a glance. Every spell he sees, every rune he touches, becomes his own. The only question remains open. Visions from the future? Will they become real? Will his brilliance make him an arbiter of justice, or a threat? Let's find out. The story begins outside the Dongbin orphanage, late at night. An old woman came to the gate of the orphanage with her child and knocked to get attention. An employee came outside and asked with a displeased look who it could be at this hour. He approached them, asked them to leave, and said that there were already too many people here. He could not accept any more. She apologized and said that they really had nowhere to go. She held out a brooch and asked if he could please understand their situation. He took it and said that they should follow him. The boy held her hand and they walked there together. He led them into a small room and said that since it was already late at night, he would explain the rules of the orphanage and the fees tomorrow. With that, he left. She bowed and thanked him for that. When he left and closed the door, she asked the child to sit on the bed and said that it must have been really hard for him. He looked at her with a worried expression and asked what was wrong with his mom and dad. She started to get nervous about this question and said that he should get some sleep and they would come. She asked him to try to get some rest. He agreed and went to bed, and she sat next to him on a chair. She started coughing up blood. Her body was shaking, and she said that she hoped that he would be happy. Because of illness, she fell on the bed. The child noticed this, sat up and asked Helen, did she fall asleep? He was very surprised when he noticed her blood on his hand and started shaking because of fear. He started pushing her, trying to wake her up, and called her name loudly. The next morning, the worker who let them in came into this room with an unfamiliar girl. He clicked his tongue in displeasure and asked why she died here and brought so many problems. This is total bad luck. She sighed and asked what should they do with this child? Since his hair color is similar to Pauline's, let him go with that girl. They will look like a pathetic mother and son, right? They noticed her and said that she was just in time. From today on, she has to take him with her to work. She agreed to it. They left, and he said that they were not a volunteer organization anyway. Since they were a couple now, he would make money from them. Dongbin Orphanage is, at first glance, a royal charity that takes care of people who have nowhere to go and receive subsidies. In fact, they exploit children under the guise of fees for services to make a profit. It is a vicious place. Pauline walked up to him, greeted him, and asked what his name was. She told him her name and said that from now on, he would be with her. He sat silently with a sad expression on his face, and she understood how he felt. She sat down next to him and said that she did not know what exactly he had to go through, but she could tell one thing for sure. He must survive no matter what. If he does, he will eventually have a chance to find happiness. She extended her hand to him and asked if he was ready to go. Rowan took her hand and agreed. After that, he started begging in the arms of his mother Pauline. Even if their relationship as mother and son was only for begging, she always took care of him. She protected him from the bullying of other children and the treats of vagrants. She was always there for him, and he was never alone. 5 years later, she was sitting on a bench looking sad, and he called her and waved his hand. She said that he worked hard so he should sit down. He sat down next to her and said that she had worked hard too. He put the jar on the bench next to him and said that he had heard that morning that she would be leaving soon. She agreed and said that she had heard that she would be working as a maid in some noble mansion. Unexpectedly for her, he said with a happy look that it was such a relief. If it was her, then everything would be all right with her everywhere. She started stroking his head and asked with a smile what he was saying. He shouldn't worry about her and should think better of himself. He laughed and said that it was because of that her hair got tangled. He thanked her for the last 5 years and said that when Helen left, he felt like he had lost everything. When the children made fun of him, and even when the tramps started fighting with him, she had always been there for him and protected him. He started crying and said that he was glad that she was going to a good place because he was grateful to her. He should congratulate her with all his heart. His parents, Helen, and now she too, were all leaving. Pauline turned him to face her and said that he should look at her. If there was no one next to him now, it didn't mean that he was lonely. A person was only truly lonely when his heart was empty. If he holds on to those who have passed away and quietly looks inside himself, he will be able to see how much everyone cherishes and loves him. So whenever he feels lonely, he should close his eyes and feel his heart. She will always be with him. After a while, at night, the protagonist went outside and thought that Pauline, who was always with him, had left. Wasn't he told to look into his heart when he didn't want to feel lonely? So that he could feel the presence of those dear to him, he was told to open the eyes of his heart. An energy took over his body. He began to see the world differently, and thought that even with his eyes closed, he could see the world. It was so beautiful. He could feel everything. His parents, Helen, Pauline, he really wasn't alone. He thanked her, started to cry, and thought that he would never forget her for the rest of his days. After a while, the manager of the orphanage said that they should all wake up. It was time to work. He stood by the window while everyone else was working and thought that a year had passed since she left. Maybe she's still getting used to her new job, since he hasn't heard from her since that day. I wonder how she's doing now? Since then, he's been working alone like the other kids. The principal assigned him to District 1, which brings in the most money. He's treated relatively well because he makes more than most. The guy walked up to him, called him by name, and said that he should make good money today too. He doesn't have to worry about bad guys with him around. MC looked at him and thought that this man Blake was the chief of District 1. He started treating him well after learning about his past one day. He also helped him realize that the light clusters he saw were mana. He agreed with a small smile and said that he was counting on him today too. He thought that there was a condensed light around his body. Later he found out that he was a swordsman who could use mana. However, his mana had a strange, cloudy glow. Mana is the source that everything in this world is made of. Every person inhales mana through their breath and exhales it again, unconsciously interfering with the flow of the world. After a while, he was sitting on the street with a jar where people were throwing money, looked up and thought that it was beautiful. Blake and some of the others can use mana in a special way through training called mana cultivation. He told him not to be interested in it because it is dangerous if used incorrectly, but he can already see. He didn't get to finish his thought because a few coins were thrown at him. He raised his head with a kind smile, thanked the teacher, and said that her heart was very beautiful. The girls were happy with such a compliment and passed by. He remained sitting in the same place and thought that he should start to get used to seeing physical forms and mana at the same time. Until recently, it was difficult for him to see both entities at the same time, but now he seemed to have gotten used to it a little. It is dizzying when physical forms and mana overlap each other. Blake came to him, looked at the money in his bank and asked, "Did he collect so much in such a short time?" Rowan said with a smile that it was all thanks to kind people. He said that this is why he needs to be more careful. There are a lot of people in this world who can't stand it when others succeed. He started to stand up and said that if he saw any suspicious guys or anything strange, he should immediately report it to him. He said goodbye to him, and he remained sitting in his place, agreed and said, "See you later." He thought that it was probably better not to talk about it. Actually, he had seen something strange in the past couple of days. Among the crowd of people, there were strangers with unusually dense and bright mana. It seemed like they had the same condensed mana in their bodies as he did. He peeked around the corner and thought that the two people had very bright colors. They watched him from the crowd and then quickly disappeared, jumping over the buildings. He didn't feel particularly threatened, and he doesn't know what will happen if people find out he can see mana, so he keeps it to himself for now. The man threw a coin into his jar. He thanked him and wished him a good day. He looked down and thought the jar was almost full. He should ask for a new jar at camp. He went to the alley, saw a person on the roof, and thought that, judging by the color of the mana, it was them. They were chasing him. But what was their goal? They hadn't acted so openly before. One behind him, the other on the side. He hoped that they would let him get to the camp faster without any trouble. He started running and thought that if Blake were here, he would have met him now. He was worried about this. Ran out to another street. He noticed the worried protagonist and called out his name loudly. He ran up to him very quickly, picked him up, and told him that he should hold on tight. He jumped onto the roof, started running, noticed people running after them, and said that those people were already here. They needed to go to the shelter. He should be careful and not drop the jar of money, otherwise he wouldn't be able to eat. He called out his name, but noticed that he wasn't responding and wondered what was wrong with him. After a while, they returned to the orphanage and Blake said that he should go first. It was a safety issue, so all the other kids would be coming back too, and he should rest for now. He hit him on the head with his finger and asked why he was frozen. This kid was scared to death from the start. They wouldn't be able to come here, so he should pull himself together and go inside. He agreed and said that he would be on guard. He entered the room, and with a surprised expression on his face, he thought that he saw how mana circulated when the body moved, how thick mana pulsated when concentrating power in the arms and legs, how mana exploded and disappeared when jumping from rooftops. He needed to try to repeat this. He had to inhale mana and then circulate it, concentrate it in the body, and use it when needed. After that, he sighed and said that now he clearly understood how to use mana. After a while, MC looked at his hand with a happy look and thought that he wanted to try this soon. Two people walked into the room, confused about what was going on. The boy said he didn't know what was going on, but they said everyone from the other dorms had come back too. A young man entered the room and knocked on the door to get their attention, telling them they had to be quiet. He was sure they were all wondering why they were suddenly called back at this hour. There was nothing to worry about though, so they didn't have to worry. After the person in charge checked each area, they would be sent to work. They didn't know when that would happen, so they all had to wait in their dorms without making any noise. He called Rowan and said with a serious expression that he had to pack his things and that he was being transferred. After that, he packed a small bag of his things, and the dorm owner told him he had to wait there for a minute. He walked over to the other man, handed him a small folder, and they started discussing something. He watched them from the side and wondered what they were talking about. They were so far away that he couldn't hear them. He started circulating mana in his body and thought that if he focused on his ears. He heard a man ask if the child beggar was being transferred from the dorm to the main building. The dorm owner said that was exactly it. The director prefers him because of his looks. They want to keep him safe. There was also an incident in the first area today. He asked if it was at the Union, right? He agreed and said that there were 2 runners there. He remembered what happened to him earlier and wondered if they were talking about those people. The man called him and said that he should follow him. After a while, they reached the right building and went up to the 2nd floor where he knocked on the door. He took the protagonist into an office and called out to a girl named Amy. He said that he should say hello since she would be his boss from today on. He said his name and said that he was from the dorm and still couldn't read, so she should keep that in mind. After that, he left and she asked how old he was. He told her his age and she asked, and he can't read? He refused and said that he never learned it. She asked, what else can you expect from a kid from a residential area? She leaned towards him and said with a smirk that she will teach him to read from tomorrow, so he should call her teacher. But in private, he can call her big sister. For a person from the dorm, he has a cultured face. He agreed, apologized, and asked why he needed to read. She got angry and asked, he doesn't even know about reading sessions? A reading session is when someone reads books to a crowd of people in an audience. Sometimes it is held by authors who have released new books, and sometimes nobles form groups and hold it regularly. It is like a contribution to the exquisite hobbies of rich people. MC asked, do they do this at the orphanage? She agreed and said that they hold sponsored readings in front of charities. If the child is lucky, a special reading is held. He looked at her and asked what it was. She said that children who read well often get adopted. A special reading is when a child who has been approved for adoption reads a din in front of his sponsor. For him, who cannot read yet, it probably sounds like a distant story. She looked closely into his eyes and thought that this child was not at all scared. She stroked his head, then went to the door and said that he should follow her. After that, they came to a room where several children were standing. Amy introduced him and said that they should be friendly and not create problems. The place in the far left corner will be his. After that, she left the room. He went to the closet and thought that a personal closet was amazing. A strange boy came up to him and asked if he really came from a residential area. Having received a positive answer, he said with a little surprise that it was interesting. This is the first time they have someone from the dorm. His name is Theo. They looked at the other kids and he said they were Noah, Caden, and Lilia. Rowan didn't know what to say, so he asked if he was beaten in the dorm. He doesn't have to worry. They won't be mean like those kids. He doesn't have to beg anymore. The main building's reading group members only have to manage the library and the reception hall and serve the guests. By the way, their room is in charge of the library. They manage the books. Then they have to greet him. Welcome. They are happy that he is with them now. When the night came, he was lying in his bed and remembered how Pauline had said earlier that books contained all the knowledge in the world. He was full of curiosity, so she was sure that he would like it. He said in a surprised voice that he really wanted to read those books. He closed his eyes and thought that his wish had come true. After a while, he closed the book after reading, sitting in the classroom, and Amy called his name loudly. He turned to her and she said that he should bring her the book he had read today. He did so. She began to read the titles of the latest books he had read, and he noticed that her expression had changed. He thought he was imagining things, and she smiled and said that they were moving from children's fairy tales to novels from the 2nd district. He had done a good job. He was happy to hear this and asked if he could stay and read all the books before returning to the room. She allowed him, and he thought that the 2nd district was the place where all the books for adults were collected. He was sure that there were a lot of interesting things there. He began to look at many different books, but his attention was caught by a book called The Birth of the Kingdom of Grafton and the Union. He began to read this book and thought what it meant that the place where he lived was in such a small and remote place. Grafton, one of the principalities, won the Long War, and the world was reorganized into a system of 1 kingdom and 6 autonomous principalities. After that, in order to suppress the war and take care of the people's welfare and public safety, the king created an organization called the Union. They have been working for peace and stability for over 200 years, so they must be good and kind people, right? Why did Blake run away? Is begging bad? However, it doesn't make sense because he got along well with the local administration, that's for sure. The orphanage and the Union don't have a very good relationship, and for some reason the orphanage is keeping the incident that happened that day a secret. What are they hiding? After a while, he felt the flow of mana, began to clean the library and thought that it was not fully worked out, but the circulation of mana when the body moves, it is quite surmountable. When he was practicing the basic method, he would just sit and calmly inhale mana. But now that his core has changed, he has trained himself to inhale mana even while moving. Thanks to this, he can now circulate mana even while moving or reading a book. However, the density of the mana still does not increase. Why does his mana never accumulate and always remain thin? It is disappointing, but he will have to try step by step. After some time, the class stood in rows and Amy said that they should get in line. The girl who came to them started looking at them and asked who she should choose today. Judging by today's state, she thought about it for a long time and called Theo, Lilia, Noah, and the protagonist. She walked up to him, leaned over and said with a smile that she couldn't send him to the concert when he had just finished his first storybook. However, if he just stood there, it would definitely look beautiful. So today, he should just observe and take in the atmosphere. He bowed and thanked the vice principal. Amy clapped her hands and said that now, the 10 people who were called should change their clothes and gather in the reception area. After a while, a student with a displeased expression said that he had only recently started reading books, and already. Another guy asked if that was a bit unfair. Theo heard them, and with a displeased expression called the two. MC came to them. He came up to them and said that it suited him very well. He looked amazing. He thanked him and said that it suited him too. Amy called him, pointed her finger, and said that he could sit over there. He agreed, and then all the students sat down at a long table in a row. She stood next to him and said that they should sit up straight because guests had arrived. Right after that, several girls entered the hall. One of them noticed Rowan and remembered how she had given him money earlier when he was begging in the street, and he had complimented her. He recognized her too, greeted her, and said that he was very glad to meet her there. He had always been grateful for the help she had given him that day. She asked, "Is he feeling well?" She was so happy to see him. The vice principal came up to her, called Lady Caroline, said his name, and asked, "Does she know him?" She asked with a smile, "So that's what his name is?" She saw him begging at the crossroads last winter. He was pretty cute back then too, but how could he become even more handsome now? She said with a smile that it was thanks to her encouragement, and he had also learned to read and write here. She took out a book and asked if in that case, maybe, he should read it today? She felt embarrassed by it and said that he was just planning on watching things happen today. She felt a little upset and said that she was really sorry. She really wanted to hear it in his voice. She felt a little worried and asked if she insisted. Maybe he should just read the last chapter as practice. She felt happy and said that it sounded great, so they would do that. He started reading the book, and the girls who came were really surprised by it. While reading from the book, he said that he hadn't even tried to remember, but it kept coming back to him in his thoughts. He didn't know why he suddenly started feeling like that. It just happened that way. He tried not to let it happen, but maybe his heart wasn't in the right place, so he decided to say it. He likes her. The girls were touched by his reading of the book and sighed at the same time. He continued reading the book and thought that the voice conveyed the mana well, but everything was wrong. Faint sighs, the sound of tears running down the cheek, the sound of biting the lower lip, even the different rhythms of the heart. When he finished reading the chapter, and Caroline said with a happy look that it was wonderful, it was a really good reading. The protagonist bowed, thanked her, and said that it was all thanks to the help of the vice principal. She asked how he learned to speak so beautifully. Would she be able to listen to his reading again tomorrow? He agreed and said that he would prepare even more. After some time, he came to the library, took out a book, and thought that using the flow of mana ultimately comes down to his own body. He threw the book that interested him into the cart and thought that he should see if there was another book that could help. Blake came up behind him and asked with a smile, "Is this the understanding of the sacred?" He turned to look at him, not scared since he knew he was coming, but he still said that he was scared. He looked confused and said that he was just at the right age to start taking an interest in such things. It was nothing special. He just heard that he was good at the sponsored reading today. Was that true? He was disappointed that he couldn't listen for himself, but since he was told that he was in the library, he decided to at least go in and look at him. MC asked, "Was he on duty then, right?" He agreed and said that he had just been a bit busy lately. He looked at him and asked, "Did something happen?" He was sitting opposite him and asked, did he remember those guys who were following him before? They had started causing trouble again, so he was going to deal with them together with the other managers. He said with a smile that if he was involved in this, those guys would have a hard time. Blake put his hands on his face, laughed, and said that hearing him say that made him feel stronger. It was a pity that he couldn't come to the reading tomorrow. He looked at him and thought that according to the book he read last time, he probably looked like a villain. However, he was kind to him, so he should say that he was a good person. He shook his head, which made him remove his hands, and said that it was okay since he would have other chances. For some reason, he felt like he would be doing readings often. Either way, he should be careful. He agreed and said that anyway, he should do his best. He should read this book when he wasn't reading. He shouldn't waste his energy in vain, and now he was leaving. Rowan stayed in the library and wondered what a fight between people who wielded mana would be like. He wondered how strong he was now, and if he would be able to stand up to them. He let mana in and tore the large book in half with ease. He reached out to pick it up and said that it was such a waste of time. After a while, he came to the office and asked the vice principal if she was looking for him. She was about to tell him and remembered how the girls came to her earlier and asked loudly with dissatisfied faces, he should be the main reader today, right? If possible, let him read alone. She doesn't need any extra voices. That's how it will be, right? He will be alone, right? Under their pressure, she promised to try hard, and currently she retold it and asked, will he be able to do it? He agreed, promised to try, and said that she doesn't have to worry. She said that he really is a good person. After a while, the vice principal stood in front of the children and said that they should listen carefully from now on. As they all know, They are going to announce a special reader for a rare occasion. This special reading will be done by Theo. He was surprised by this and asked, "Is it really him?" She agreed and said that they should all congratulate him. He thought with a confused look that he didn't think it would be him. The protagonist congratulated him and he thanked him for that and said that he read so well that he would soon go to a good place. After that, he and Amy went outside. He and Noah and Lilia looked at this through the window and thought that he was a good child. It was a little disappointing. However, the sadness did not last long. After some time in the hall, he stood in front of a group of girls and read from a book. Stop there. He came because he wanted to hold her hand. Sadness is inevitable. He still has so much that he has not told. He thought that this was happening because the people who were looking for him kept asking him to read. The vice principal called him and asked if today he has to read in the morning and in the afternoon. He does not mind, right? He asked, so he will do it twice a day? She took off her glasses and said that it would be difficult, but that it couldn't be helped because everyone wanted to hear him read. He smiled and said that he was very grateful and happy that everyone liked it. He made a pitiful face and said that, however, after reading one piece, he felt so emotionally drained. Would it be possible for him to go outside to get some fresh air during breaks? She said that it was okay, he could. However, he couldn't go beyond the backyard. He said with a happy face that he understood and was grateful for that. After that, he went outside and began to concentrate the energy in his body and thought that he was marking points at each location of the muscles, joints, and bones that he had read about in books and drawing paths connecting them like blood vessels, and he was sending mana along these paths. The main thing is the desire for the mana to move along with the body. Not only thought is needed but also a strong will. He released a large amount of energy with a bright flash of light. He was a little surprised by what happened and thought that everything else was fine. The problem was still in the concentration of mana. Maybe it was the vessel that was his body. He shouldn't be impatient. It was more important to make sure that he hadn't developed a weakness in using mana like the others. By the time Blake carried him to the hideout, he was already barely walking. Considering that the Alliance couldn't chase them all the way, it seems like they were out of strength too. It seems like there's a general weakness in using stored mana. I wonder if he can use external mana as his own? If I tried to direct the sound, he even pushed the external mana away with the sound. Come to think of it, it should be possible even with weight or shape. He was able to lift Leaf with his mana and happily said that it was as he thought. After a while, the vice principal said that Lilia would be doing this special reading, and they should all congratulate her. MC congratulated her and said that he hoped she would be healthy and happy. She thanked him, turned around, and silently started fiddling with her fingers. He noticed this and asked if she wanted to say something. She said with an embarrassed expression that she actually liked him. What caught their attention was one of the kids saying, "However, this is strange. She can read well too, but he can't believe he wasn't chosen. The director doesn't want to let him go. Doesn't he know the story of the goose that laid golden eggs? So they're keeping him on purpose because he makes money." He turned to her, apologized, and asked if she could say it again. She ran away from him very quickly and said loudly that it was okay. She ran back to her friends and started crying, and he, with a puzzled expression, wondered what that was. They said that if he left, he would end up with a good family. Then he would be able to read new books and experience a wider world. Maybe he'll even find clues about mana accumulation. He doesn't know when that will happen, but he's very curious. The next day, in the backyard of the main building, Rowan was spinning a pencil in the air with mana and thought that everything was easy now. It would be good if he continued training like this. His attention was drawn to a man climbing over the fence, and he wondered who that was. It was the dorm supervisor who brought him here. He fell to the ground, screaming loudly in pain, and he wondered what was going on. Mana was getting dimmer. He saw a man named Igor who brought him to the main building. He helped the supervisor up. They went to the main building and he asked what happened. He was breathing heavily because of fatigue and said that they were the freaks from the Union. He turned around, called him, and said that he should pretend that he didn't see anything and go back to the building. He agreed and wondered what that was. Something was wrong here. After that, Amy entered the hall and said loudly that the afternoon reading was cancelled. They all should go back to their rooms. All the sponsors were sent away too. They should just do as they are told. The children were clearly worried about what was happening because this had never happened before. She walked up to the main character, called his name, and said that he should get ready. He had a special reading. He went to his room, started changing, remembered what happened earlier, and thought that the expression on her face was not the same as usual. The Union was to blame for the district chief's state. It was quite possible that the cancellation of the sponsored readings had something to do with this incident. He left the room, called the teacher Amy, and asked if they were sure they were going straight to the sponsor. He thought that he wasn't sure, but something was definitely going on at the orphanage. She was confused by this question, turned away from him and said that he should follow her. They walked down the corridor, and he asked if he could ask if it was Lady Caroline who had decided to adopt him. She refused and said that it was someone else. They left the main building and went to the annex near the orphanage, and she said that they had arrived. MC looked at the building and thought that it was shrouded in a dark and murky mana. Edgar opened the door for them and greeted him and said that they should go, since they were late. He left with him and turned around, and his attention was caught by the expression on the face of the teacher Amy. He started to look around and thought that it seemed strange to him that the building had no windows, but it was even darker in here than he imagined. He should be on guard just in case. He heard someone quietly ask if they really had to do this. Shouldn't they run? He was a little surprised by this and thought that it was the vice principal's voice. She quietly said that they should save everything they can before retreating. The spell's state requires effort. What else can they do? Edgar said that he should sit on that chair and start reading. He agreed and thought, are they hiding from the Alliance because of what happened recently, and what kind of spell is this? So he should read this book? He sat down on the chair with a confused look, looked at the hole with a ladder in the floor, and wondered, what kind of pit is this? Is there something there? This is the first time he has seen such a large accumulation of mana. He was ordered to start, and Rowan said that he was starting his reading. Under the lightning in the gray sky, Ariel looked at the face of the man lying in the bed. He thought that he could feel a large accumulation of mana in that pit, but something was wrong. At the same time, he could also feel a huge invisible accumulation of mana. He continued reading the book and thought that he was experiencing countless inexplicable emotions: joy, affection, regret, loneliness, anger, irritation, sadness, sorrow. His listener, this accumulation of mana. He continued reading the book and wondered what was happening. While he was reading, this pit was sucking out his mana. No, he couldn't let it take all his mana. He had to endure. If they started to be afraid, it meant that the Union was coming soon. He needed to concentrate. He would try to absorb the mana floating around him and can control the flow of it. He started to pull the mana towards himself, created a barrier around himself, and thought that he had done it and was perfectly controlling the flow of mana. He continued reading the book and thought that now he needed to buy time. Since he couldn't feel any more mana approaching, it was likely that the people from the Union hadn't arrived at this building yet. He needed to somehow prolong his reading. The people nearby quietly asked if he had been reading for too long. Was the book really that long? She didn't know that. The fruits should have ripened by now. This wouldn't do. He needed to go check. She would go with him. The protagonist closed his eyes and thought that the director and his group had started moving. Had he bought enough time? He heard loud sounds and thought that they were here. Edgar had blocked the door to this hall with a large stone statue. He quickly walked down the corridor and complained loudly. He closed the book, stood up from his chair, and wondered what was going on. They all went down to the basement. What could be there? At that moment, Edgar hit the director in the face, and the deputy asked what he was doing. He asked loudly in a dissatisfied voice, what did they do? They want to escape because they are guilty of something, right? While they were distracted, he walked past, saw many human bodies in one place, and wondered, is that a tree? He saw a girl among them, and with a shocked expression realized that it was Pauline. Edgar grabbed him by the head and called him loudly in a dissatisfied voice. Blake came up to him, called him loudly, and asked what he did. Why did he kill the director? He turned to him, was about to say something, but he did not listen to him and asked what he was talking about. He handed him a fruit and said that they suddenly escaped, and after following them, he discovered it. He was surprised by this and asked why the fruit was in this state. He said that he brought it to make more fruit, but they did something, and the fruit was now in this state. Blake went to the tree and took out a sword from there. MC looked at this and remembered how earlier he asked why he didn't have a sword. He looked away and said that he needed it for something else. He watched with a smirk as the bodies of these people began to return to their previous form and blood began to fall on the floor. He grabbed Edgar's hand and began to release his mana, which made him start screaming loudly in pain. He suddenly turned to them and saw that he was engulfed in a very strong energy and asked, what is this? They told him he was special, but not like this. It looks like he learned to use mana. The next second, the protagonist was behind him. He walked up to the tree and stretched his hand forward to the gaping hole. He sent his mana forward, enveloping it. He thought, what is this? Why is he crying? Blood? Whose terrible memories are these? Huh? Is it him? He saw himself, and then the memories cracked and shattered into small pieces. He thought, just a little more. He doesn't know what this is, but something is slowly seeping in. Familiar and pleasant, warm mana, these memories. He understood. He forgot. He remembered the words that were said to him. Rowan, a person is truly alone only when his heart is empty. If he keeps those who left in his heart, he will never be truly alone. If he looks closely, he will see how much everyone cares for him, how much they love him. Then he asked how he can look into his heart. Pauline told him to close his eyes and look into his heart. He thought, oh, this is mana telling him not to lose what is precious. Even if time stands still, the memories and love of Mother Pauline are eternal. Blake asked, is the tearful reunion over already? He put his sword on the protagonist's shoulder and called his name. Then he said, waiting for a long time is quite boring. Does he know? He waited for him to finish, despite the short time. He wanted to take him with him because he is smarter than he looks. Then he threw the sword over his shoulder and added, everything went wrong because of those idiots. Well, he should let him ask just in case. Doesn't he want to go with him? Otherwise, he will have to die quietly, but it would be a shame to kill him. With such skills, he will definitely be useful. The protagonist asked, and where will they go? He answered, probably to another farm, to manage children who will become trees and grow trees like the one in front of him. He will learn to work under his leadership. In other words, he will become a member of Lutel? The protagonist clarified. Lutel? Blake explained. It is an organization he is a member of. Their leader is trying to change the world with the help of dark magic. They are his loyal servants. Then MC asked, then this tree is his doing, brother? He asked. Where does he get such powers? He only carefully watches what the first priests create. So is he going or not? They do not have time. The protagonist negatively shook his head and answered that he does not want to. The next second, Blake pointed his sword at him and shouted. He left him no choice. The next second, a powerful aura appeared around the protagonist. Blake was surprised to think, what the? He can't move. MC put his fingers on his sword and asked, Brother Blake, was he the one who killed Pauline? He asked, what does he want, revenge? The protagonist said, if that's the case, he can't let him live. He thought, what for? The next second, he knelt down and screamed in pain. The protagonist said that he should have dodged. Blake screamed, damn idiot. The next second, the protagonist swung his hand, attacking Blake's neck, and said that he hoped that he didn't hold a grudge against him, because he himself was to blame for what happened. He would never forgive people like him. Then he thought, a cloud of light descended the stairs. There are several of these. The union members walked forward. The vice captain ordered the rest to comb the entire area up and down. The rest answered, yes, vice captain. Oscar, looking at the protagonist, thought in surprise, a child? He came closer and said, interesting ability, telekinesis. MC was surprised. Excuse me? He asked, did he learn magic at Lutel? The protagonist clarified, magic? No, he didn't learn anywhere and has nothing to do with Lutel. Oscar folded his arms and asked, didn't learn? Then, how did he use mana? He replied that he learned it himself. He thought it was impossible, but it didn't seem like he was lying. At first he was suspicious, but it disappeared after looking at those eyes. After that, he introduced himself. He is Oscar, the vice captain of the Faith Division of the Union. What is his name? The protagonist introduced himself in response and said that he knows that the Faith Division is the first division of the Union, responsible for intelligence and reconnaissance using harmonious swordsmanship. He has a gold badge on his chest, so he must be a seeker, right? Oscar thought, what an unusual boy, he has never seen such a one before. And even in such a situation, he is careful with this threatening blade. The protagonist thought he wasn't mistaken. Was he? Then Oscar suggested going outside. Could he put the blade away for now? And he thought, it's incredible. Such mana from the body of only a 10-year-old boy. At that moment, a subordinate approached Oscar and said that he had something to report. It seemed that, apparently, the tree that was created less than 2 years ago, but for some reason the spell was removed. He was surprised. Removed? If the high priest did it, there should be some traces left. Maybe Father Shan came here first. The state of the fruits is also strange. They need to figure out what exactly happened. At that moment, MC approached the tree and said, he apologizes. Theo, he should have played with him a little longer. Lily, when she left, he should have done something differently. Vice Captain, has he seen many trees like this? He confirmed it. The protagonist asked, and in the future, he will visit other farms, right? Oscar thought, amazing. He thought he would drown in sadness. He said that it was the Alliance's mission to destroy the Lutel farms. He thought that his voice sounded emotionless for a child, but he would say it right. The next second, the protagonist turned around and asked, can he take him with him? He thought, this is a firm determination that is hard to miss. He is not shocked. He is someone who does not show emotions. Then he turned around and said, the investigation is above all. After that, they will decide what to do with him. They will go. MC followed him, and then took the brooch from the body and said, okay, Vice Captain. After a while, the subordinate reported, there are no casualties on their side. He confirms 13 dead on the Lutel side and 3 on the Orphanage side. It seems that there are 2 escapees. Apparently, high-ranking priests and leaders intervened only at the initial stage of the ritual formation, and the reason for the collapse of the ritual is unknown. For a detailed analysis, they requested the support of the 4th Stability Unit, and this is where he ends his report. Oscar said, great job. Then he turned to the protagonist and asked where he felt most at ease. He answered, in the library. He said, it would be better to move to another place now. This conversation could take some time. Then he told him to lead him. After a while, they sat down at the table and Oscar said he explored the library. It seems there is no book on learning and using magic. How did he learn it himself? The protagonist answered that he just guessed. He was surprised. Just like that, the protagonist confirmed it. He is very smart. Oscar thoughtfully said that he believes that he is not lying, that he really is smart. Then he should tell him everything that has happened to him so far. MC lowered his head and said, the reason why he first came to the orphanage. After that, he continued his story, and after a while, putting his hands to his chest, he said, it seems to him that Mother Pauline gave him this power. Oscar replied, I see. He thought about it, but there was still a lot he didn't understand. A child who had never learned magic easily killed Edgar and Blake. Blake was a skilled swordsman, which even he knew about. Besides, it seemed like that child had also destroyed the ritual started by the high priest. He was currently able to use telekinesis. He didn't look tired at all. There was no way such talent would go unnoticed. The protagonist then asked if he could ask a question. He replied, okay. He asked, what is a tree? The vice captain replied, it is a ritual device of dark magic created by the Lutel organization. The core of it is human life. The protagonist asked, they were talking about fruits. Is that what the director and the others from Lutel wanted? He confirmed it. It is the crystallization formed by absorbing mana, that is the fruit. Since it is condensed mana, which is the core of life, it is extremely valuable. He then held the fruit forward and said that it is an unfinished fruit. MC asked if it was edible. He confirmed it and added that eating the fruit instantly increased mana accumulation, so it sold for high prices on the black market. The protagonist asked what the reading sessions were for. He replied that some magical rituals had certain conditions attached to them. They viewed the reading as a process that stabilized the tree and improved the quality of the fruit. And looking back, at the time of the reading, the tree was not much different from the people listening to the reading. It was as if it had completely calmed down. MC then said thoughtfully, it must have stabilized. After all, before they became a tree, they were people with a heart. Oscar put his hand out to his side and said, that's a good idea. They also approached it from that perspective. Then the protagonist asked if he could continue asking questions. He answered yes, he could continue. The protagonist asked what telekinesis was. He answered, it was a type of magic. The way he levitated the sword was magic that moved objects using mana. The protagonist transferred the shard from one hand to the other and looked at it and said, ah, so that also falls under the category of magic. He still doesn't know much about magic. The vice captain thought his telekinesis was about first class, but it was still unusual. Then he asked, did he say he was 10 years old? The protagonist confirmed it, and Oscar asked, he wants to go with them, right? But he is curious. He has already been betrayed by those who were good to him. So why does he trust the Alliance? He replied that he didn't trust them completely. But according to his intuition, Vice Captain Oscar seemed like a good person, as if he was all bright and pure. He smiled and folded his arms across his chest, wondering, is he bright and pure? He then said that he decided to trust them just for that reason. Isn't that too reckless? He replied that he was pretty good at judging people. Oscar said, but he still couldn't just decide whether to go with them. Even if he did, he couldn't let an outsider interfere with their business. MC asked, is it because he doesn't have enough ability? He can use both mana and telekinesis. Oscar told Rowan to listen carefully. There are things more important than ability. The protagonist looked down sadly. He added, no, Rowan. He means, it's not that there's something wrong with him. It's not that easy to make an exception. He's just too young. The protagonist asked, is age really more important than ability? He thought of course his magical talent is truly brilliant. The fact that he defeated 2 experienced mercenaries does not change anything, but that is a separate issue. Then he said, in addition to ability, the Union constantly has to make countless decisions. These decisions are usually made based on a lot of experience. And experience is the same as years lived. The protagonist asked, so he wants to say that he lacks experience because he has little of both? Oscar turned away and thought that he did not say so categorically. Then he said, they do not know for sure yet. After all, he talked to him for only a few hours. Then he put his hand to his head and added, okay, they will finish with this topic. He needs to ask him something. Why did he kill Edgar? Wasn't it because he grabbed his head? MC replied, he had already killed the director and his deputy in front of him, and he acted like he was going to smash his head in two, so he couldn't let him do that. The vice captain pointed out that he ended up killing both of them. He had to be honest. Did any other thoughts influence his decision? Was his judgment clouded by anger? He replied that he had no intention of denying the atrocity he had committed under the influence of momentary emotion. It was an unchangeable fact and the consequences of his actions, but he thought that through anger and sadness, he was able to make a clearer judgment. Oscar asked what he based his judgment on. He replied, too many innocent people had been sacrificed at his hands. Even if he repented, there was no one in this world who would forgive him. And most importantly, he had no right to give him a chance to live. Oscar asked, but does he have the right to kill? The protagonist clenched his fists and looked at it and said, he took someone's life, and he thought it was fair, and he had the opportunity to do so. However, it was true that he killed a person based on his own opinion. If someone told him that he had to take responsibility for it, he would have nothing to say. The vice captain asked, did he have to kill them? He replied, someone had to do it. Isn't that why the Union exists in the world? The Union is an organization that was created to achieve its main goal and realize it as the highest value. However, the true ideal of the Union was the streets filled with laughter and happiness, so that people could feel calm when looking at the sky. Peace and stability with a glimmer of hope for future generations. It was a unification for a goal that may never be achieved, but so that people could take responsibility for their own existence after their lives were not filled with any special meaning. It would not be an exaggeration to say that he had the same ideals as the Union. He wanted to give him credit for his insight and calm answer, but it was not the kind of answer one would expect from a man his age. He then asked if he had heard anything from Grave. The protagonist clarified. Grave? He said that they were traveling everywhere, seeking to disrupt the peace and existence of the kingdom, Lutel being one of them. Currently, the first squad was working to eliminate the infestation of Lutel forces throughout the country and restore the Union branch. They did not know how long it would take, but with his help, everything could change. MC asked what this meant. Oscar stood up from his chair and told him to go to the Union. He must prove his skills, and he would recognize him as one of them. He wondered if he should have any hopes for him. After a while, they were standing on the street. Oscar, turning to his subordinates, said that the manager of this orphanage was exploiting strays and orphans for his own dark purposes. They have conspired with the Dark Order Lutel to carry out their deeds of human sacrifice. The Union, the sword and shield of the kingdom, has tracked down the hidden cell of Lutel and intends to return the orphanage of Dongan to its rightful forms. That is all. If there are no questions, they will head west at dawn. The 4th Division will join them later. Sienna. She walked closer and bowed, saying, "Yes, Vice Captain." The protagonist, looking at her, thought, "The flow of mana, it is like fog that rolls in waves." Then Oscar pointed at him and said that this is Rowan, a witness from the scene of the events in Dongun. He orders her to bring him to the Union safe and sound. She bowed and said, "The order will be carried out, Vice Captain." She then looked at the protagonist and introduced herself. She is Sienna, a knight of the faith. The protagonist greeted her and introduced himself. She said, "The journey to the Union will take about 15 days. The journey was long, so he should hurry and take all the things they would need." He replied, "It was fine. He had no things." She sighed and said they would not have a chance after leaving. If he had any questions, he should ask them now. He asked, "Was she perhaps an elf?" She replied, "She was a dark elf." He said, despite this, she seemed very intelligent. Before, he thought that dark elves were something dark and murky. Then he bowed and said, if his question or expression was rude, then he apologized. This was the first time he saw a dark elf who did not seem so mysterious to him. She thought, not strange, but mysterious. Then she walked up to the horse, and placing her hand on the saddle, said, it was probably because of his pedigree. MC looked at her in surprise, and then Oscar helped him onto the saddle and said, "Okay, it's time to go. They'll see each other at the Union. Rowan, he'll go ahead." The protagonist said, "Vice Captain Oscar and the other guys, please, they must return safely." The others sighed and smiled, waving at him. The next second, they set off. After a while, they stopped for a rest and sat down near a fire. Sienna, holding out the sheath to the protagonist, told him to take this. She thought he might need a sheath for this blade. He thought he was curious about what she was doing, and it turns out this is what she was doing. Then he thanked her, calling her mistress. She was surprised. Mistress? That's so weird. He asked if he should call her big sister. She held out her hand to the fire and said, "That's a bit too." Then he thought for a moment, then smiled and said, then, since he would soon be joining the alliance, maybe he should just call her elder? She looked at him silently, then turned her gaze to the fire and told him to do as he wished. And then she looked at him out of the corner of her eye and said, his ability is very unusual. He asked, is it? Vice Captain Oscar called it telekinesis. She said it might look like that. Maybe it was better to pretend that it was. He asked, what kind of ability was it? She said she had never seen anything like it. An ability that directly touches mana and manipulates it without spells. Only ancient elves could have such a power. He wondered. Ancient elves? She said, the race from which the elves descended before they split into species like hers. Judging by the color of his eyes, his parents must have been unusual people. He lowered his gaze and thought, parents. As morning came, they continued on their way. Sienna called him, and stopping said, this is an alliance. They passed by the busy streets, and she said that the Union is divided into residential and commercial areas. Suppliers from different regions and different races stay here. The Union is the most fortified fortress on the continent. It is not just these walls. He asked, what is it? She said, because the strongest people in the world gather here. That is why it is called the sword and shield of the continent. This gathering of military power supports the kingdom, keeps the 6 principalities in check, and protects the citizens from grave. MC said, I see. She then announced, they have arrived. He will be living here from now on. They then passed through the gate that opened. After a while, they walked down the street. Lazarus, the director of the Union's administrative bureau, approached them and said, Sienna, he thanks her for her work. She said, in front of them is the director of the administrative bureau, Lazarus. He looked at the protagonist and said, he must be Rowan. Does he mind talking in private? The protagonist nodded, and after a while, they sat down at the table. The protagonist thought that he had felt it from the beginning, but this place was blindingly bright. A gathering of military might. They say he is the brightest strong man he has ever seen. How strong must he be, this man? And then Lazarus reached out to his hand and asked if he could extend his hand to him, and then he took the protagonist's hand. Mana began to swirl around, and MC noticed his tattoo. Thought, this, so mana can be controlled with such precision. This is a completely different level of mana manipulation than what he had been doing. He only knows a fraction of what he should. To think that so many people can skillfully handle mana. Then Lazarus looked at him and said, is this brooch the thing he took from the body of the deputy director of the orphanage? The protagonist replied that he did not steal it. It originally belonged to his grandmother. He asked, so he took back what was rightfully his. Can he take a look? MC suddenly stopped, thought in surprise. He can't move, as if their mana is tied up and won't let go. The director's mana manipulation is extremely precise. Every movement carries a powerful force. If he overcomes the gravitational and magical force from the compression at the same time, like this. And then he pulled his hand out of the director's hands. In response, he laughed slightly and smiled, said, he was wondering what kind of ability allows you to use telekinesis without spells. This is really amazing. He is shocked. The protagonist thought that he was careless. He tried to imitate his mana manipulation out of curiosity, but what he sees through him, although it seems that he is a good person. Then Lazarus took the sheath from his hands and looked thoughtfully at the brooch. MC thought in surprise. The director's mana was definitely wavering. Then he said, his eyes are unusual, and the brooch also stands out. The protagonist asked if he could ask questions. He replied, of course. He asked if he was the strongest person in the union. The director? In response, he laughed and replied that he was not the strongest. He was just an old raccoon helping out a member of the union. The protagonist raised his index finger and noted that he did not look much like a raccoon. Raccoons were fluffier. He smiled and replied that it was a metaphor. Anyway, there are 7 experts here who are the leaders of the units. They are masters with great abilities, and then there is one who is a commander and a governor who is the absolute authority in the union, so he is just a raccoon compared to them. Would that answer his question? The protagonist confirmed it, and then asked if he could come again, if he had any more questions. They left the room, and Lazarus ruffled his hair and replied, of course, he would appreciate it if he asked for a meeting in advance. He is a busy man, did he know? MC smiled at him and thought he was a good person, very kind and strong. He liked him. Then he thanked him. He thought he was glad he came to the union. As night fell, Sienna came to the gate and said, Rowan, this is the union school where he will live. He was surprised. A union school? She explained. It is a place where the union members, with their families, leave their children when they go on a mission. He said since it is a school, it means he will learn something. She replied, for 5 years, he will receive basic education and train together as a potential recruit. However, since the union is a collection of swordsmanship, magic and various arts from different countries, the school does not teach any specific vision or technique, only theories and basics of swordsmanship and magic. He said, wow, a school. She smiled, sighed, and looked at him. Sometime later, at the union school, Daphne, the head of the department, approached the protagonist and said that the uniform suited him very well. In response, he thanked her and asked, is she by any chance a teacher? She replied, oh my god, she forgot to introduce herself. Then she introduced herself and explained that she taught languages. She then handed him the documents and said that this was the schedule and list of subjects for first years. He should not be shy. He should choose classes outside of the compulsory subjects. He thought, understanding mana, basic swordsmanship, basic magic, herbology, astronomy, they all looked interesting and fun. Then he smiled and said that he wrote them all down. She said, now she will look at them. Then she thoughtfully looked at his choice and said, this is too much. With this schedule, it will be very difficult for him. If he doesn't manage to meet the schedule, he will fail and there will be problems, right? He said, but everything looks interesting and fun. She said, in addition to classes, there will be homework and exams, so it will be difficult to keep up the pace. Studying is not something easy and fun, as he may think. He looked at her in surprise and then asked, why is studying difficult? She thought, what an unusual child. Then she said, okay, she will share this with the teachers. Well, will he go to his first class? He confirmed it. After a while, the door to the classroom opened. The protagonist walked forward and, looking at the students, thought, as expected, everyone's mana is denser than his. As he thought, the problem was in his body. Daphne then walked to the podium and said, this is Rowan. He entered their school a little late. Rowan, please. He should introduce himself to the class. He agreed, and then, looking at the others, thought, standing like this in front of everyone reminds him of the time when he was doing readings. Then he said, hello, he is Rowan from the Donggun Orphanage. Please, they should take care of him. Then Daphne looked at him and thought, my god, she was completely lost in her thoughts. Then she said, well done. And now he can sit in that empty seat. He agreed with her and went to the empty seat. Then he sat down on the chair. Daphne, opening the textbook, said, today they will read the fairy tale on page 24 of the literature textbook. Rowan, can he read? He confirmed it. He learned at the orphanage. She said, then they will listen to him again. He agreed, and then thought, is this it? He remembered how Amy, putting her hand on the book, said, they will see, the earwig is not lonely, the wise whiteness, the delicious excrement of the golden pig, the hairy bride. He thought, when he was at the orphanage, wasn't that the story about the hairy bride that teacher Amy had last told him? Then he said, the girl had tried everything to remove the hair growing on her knees, but the more she plucked, the more hair grew, and it even stopped getting thicker. He wondered why she had grimaced when she saw the last book. Had she unconsciously identified herself with the girl who had invisible hair that hid some kind of Lutel connection? He said, it's a curse. He thought, no, this is too much. And unless he meets teacher Amy again and learns everything directly from her, he will never know what was in her heart. He thought, people seem harder to understand than to learn. Then he said, she was no longer sad. The next second, the others cried out in joy. Wow. Daphne, putting her hands up, thought, my god, an amazing child has joined them. After a while, the protagonist was walking down the hallway, and some students came up to him and said, Rowan, his reading just now was amazing. She had never seen teacher Daphne praise anyone like that. It was like the sentences came to life. In response, the protagonist smiled at everyone and thanked them. Then he looked at the student standing in front of him and thought, this child. He recognized her. She was the child he saw by the tree. And then she walked forward and extended her hand, saying, she is Sophie Poble, the class representative. Nice to meet you. He shook her hand and said that he was also pleased to meet you. Then she said, the next class is an elective. What subject is he taking? He replied that he signed up for the basics of fencing. She said that she thought so. That dagger is on his belt, right? So he also wants to join the Union troops. He confirmed this and thought that he had signed up for all the extracurricular classes. Then he asked, is it necessary to learn fencing to join the alliance? He thought holding a sword doesn't seem to suit him. Then she looked at him in surprise. He also looked at her in surprise and thought, did he say something wrong? After a while, everyone came to class. Diego Sanchez, the fencing teacher, shouted, first come, first serve. The others quickly ran forward. One of the students turned around and shouted, Rowan, they are going forward. He must not fall behind. MC thought, everyone is using mana, not only him, all his friends too. The next second, he quickly ran forward, overtaking several students. They wondered, who is this? He is so fast. Then the protagonist caught up with Sophie. She thought in surprise, Rowan, this is impossible. He overtook everyone in a second. Then the protagonist ran even further forward and smiled and shouted, hey guys, they should try to catch up with him. He thought he was even happier because there was mana everywhere. Then the student shouted, what the? Everyone should be careful. Diego thought in surprise, huh? Is that the new guy? How unusual. To think he ran away from everyone with such a small stature. Has he already trained in mana meditation? He needs to watch him more closely. Then he shouted, don't slow down. He wants to see who can run to the end. The others agreed with him. After a while, everyone lined up in front of the teacher. The protagonist thought happily, running with friends using mana. Do they do this every day at school? At that moment, Sophie, breathing heavily, looked at him and thought, is he not a human? Although she overtook him at first, he caught up with her and ended up running a whole lap more than her. Even after running like that, he does not show any signs of fatigue. Then he turned to her with a smile and asked, that was incredibly fun, wasn't it, Sophie? She looked at him in horror and thought, as expected, he is not human. And then Diego came up to him and put his hands on his waist and said, he hoped he was not tired. His name is Diego Sanchez, and he will be teaching him the basics of fencing. Nice to meet him, Rowan. The protagonist smiled and looked at him and replied that it was nice to meet him too, Teacher Diego. Then he pointed his hands to the wooden swords and said, it's time to start their lesson. And so, everyone should bring their wooden swords. One of the students put her hands behind her head and said that she wanted to rest a little more. Diego folded his arms over his chest and shouted at them not to complain. And then he looked at the protagonist and said that he should also take a sword. Why did he stop? He replied, simply. Then he sank into terrible memories and said that he did not want to hold it. The teacher looked at him in surprise and asked, is he afraid of the sword? Then he put his hand on his shoulder and said, the sword is indeed a dangerous tool. It is good when you approach it responsibly, but still, it is just a tool. Doesn't everything depend on who exactly holds the sword in their hands? The sword is the proof of his heart, soul, so he must face it face to face. The protagonist looked at him and thought, it is just a tool. If Blake handled a staff instead of a sword, would he be afraid of staffs? Then he went to the weapons stand and thought that he still does not want to stop being a swordsman, and in general to master the art of fencing, but this does not mean that he should just close his eyes to it. Then he took the weapon in his hand. Diego thought, it seems that he has the quality of a good swordsman. Too bad, his willpower is weak. Then he said, okay, now they will train in pairs. They must use any means to defeat their opponent. Rowan, Sophie, to make things fair, they will be paired with them since they both took first place. They looked at each other and Sophie thought, she is with Rowan. He looked at her and thought, a duel with Sophie? Just then, one of the students sitting on the ground said, even if he won the sprint, fencing will still be difficult, right? The student raised her index finger and said, of course, the Poble family's swordsmanship is recognized even in the kingdom. After that, the teacher put his hands on his waist and said, they should start when they are ready. The next second, Sophie swung her weapon. MC thought that he had never seen real swordsmanship, but she held the sword firmly in her hands. He did not even have such an unpleasant feeling like that time. Then, he looked at the sword in his hands and thought, is this good swordsmanship? He wants to take advantage of this opportunity. With these thoughts, he got into a stance. Diego and Sophie looked at him in surprise and thought that this was the perfect position for attack and defense. Sophie thought he took such a stance that it was hard to believe that he was holding a sword for the first time. She can't lose in running or fencing. It concerns her and the pride of the Poble family. She will not lose. With these thoughts, she ran to attack and sharply dodged the protagonist's attack. He thought in surprise. She dodged his attack. The next place where Sophie's sword will hit will be the chest. The next second, she really pointed the weapon forward. The protagonist responded in the same way. He thought, shoulder, head, their swords crossed, and then they jumped back, after which the protagonist struck again. Then the teacher shouted, stop. Sophie thought his sword was already standing before Teacher Diego gave the order. That's not all. It was as if he had already read the movement of her sword, How far ahead can this guy see? Then she said that she lost, but she had a request. They should repeat their duel. He smiled, looking at her, and then said, okay. After a while, they sat down on the grass and Sophie said, Rowan, his duel today was very impressive. Just think. He is so good despite the fact that it was the first time he picked up a sword. Perhaps he has incredible talent for fencing. He smiled and said that the first 2 times he was just lucky, and the last 2 strikes he could have lost. She thanked him for saying that. They would see each other again. At that moment, the student sighed and said how glad he was. The next lesson is learning the basics of magic. Another student said, so the break will be longer. MC asked why there was a break in magic lessons. Shouldn't they work hard to become members of the union? The others looked at him in surprise, and one of the students said, the teacher is great, but no matter how well he teaches, learning magic is hard. The protagonist asked, so learning magic is hard. Who is the teacher? He was surprised. Rowan. He really doesn't know anything, right? The one who teaches the basics of magic, the former respected commander and the current dean of the magic faculty, Teacher Arthur. After a while, a teacher walked into classroom. Sophie whispered to the protagonist, this man is Professor Arthur. He remembers what they said back then, right? He used to be an honorary commander, and now he is the dean of the magic faculty. The protagonist thought, his mana is denser than the director's. I wonder how strong the strongest person in the union is. And then Arthur said, he heard that a new student entered today. The MC stood up and greeted him, saying that his name was Rowan, and that he was going to be in his class from today. The professor, thoughtfully scratching his beard, greeted him and introduced himself, explaining that he taught the basics of magic. Well, for some of the students attending this class, this might seem like a boring lesson. The protagonist said that he was planning to become a mage and join the union. In response, the professor laughed and remarked that he was a good guy. But Rowan, did he know that the path he was striving for was much longer than fencing? He thought, longer than fencing? That's why he reacted like that? He replied that it wasn't so. He didn't know why. The professor put his hand forward and asked, Sophie, why doesn't she answer this question? She answered, in order to master magic, you need to not only have knowledge, but also load your mind and body. And even if he has exceptional talent in magic, he will not be recognized as a first-class mage until he has completed at least 10 years of training. The professor added, so with magic, it is difficult to become a member of the union immediately after graduating. The protagonist thought, first-class mages cannot directly become the main force, only be in reserve. To become an active participant, someone on the front lines, you need to reach the 2nd class. In that case, he said, then it is enough to reach the 3rd class of magic before graduating. Arthur looked at him in surprise and asked, does he even know what the 3rd class means? The protagonist thoughtfully answered that he does not. He knows little about magic. And then the professor turned around and began to write a spell on the board. He thought, no wonder he approached the matter so frivolously. Then he said, then he should let him tell him why fencing is the main focus of the union, and why magic is increasingly perceived as a scientific study of truth and wisdom. He pointed to the board and said, here is the formula to reproduce the fire arrow. Did anyone notice what is wrong with this formula? MC thought it looked like the shape he saw near the pit. It looked strangely complicated. What is written in it? And then Arthur said, it is natural that they cannot figure it out, so they should not be upset. Even though it looks complicated, the fire arrow is one of the simplest spells. More complex spells are far beyond their imagination. The next second, the letters turned into fire, creating an arrow flying forward. The protagonist looked at it and thought in surprise, but something is unstable about this. Even though it is fire, it seems like it is about to melt, disappear. Then the professor waved his hand, dispersing the fire, and said, but the formulas are sensitive to this. Even after depleting mana, one tiny mistake, and everything collapses. And then he wrote the spell again, and created the fire arrow again. The students shouted in surprise, wow. The professor said, so the magicians have to analyze the entire formula again to find the error, or find even a small change. Normal patience and understanding will not do. To realize the fire arrow in the form of a fireball, it will not only require more mana, but also require a lot of effort on the mind and body. With that, he held the fireball in his hands and added, and that's not all. Compared to fencing, magic reaches its limit much faster. Does anyone know why? Sophie raised her hand and said, because although both use mana, directing mana into a weapon, in the form of an aura, is much more effective than manifesting it in the form of magic. The professor said that this is excellent. Due to the large consumption of mana, magic puts a lot of pressure on the body and mind. The strength of a magician depends on the mana reserve. As MC thought, if a mage's power is proportional to his mana, then with his relatively low mana concentration, it would be difficult to use powerful magic. But if he studied the process of using magic and the related phenomena, wouldn't he be able to use powerful magic? The professor then pointed to the board again and said, here's a question. What does he think is needed to cast this magic? Rowan. He guessed a formula written on the board. He said that was correct, but he wouldn't be able to work with that long formula every time he cast a spell. After that, he drew a magic symbol and added, that's why it's common for this extensive information to be drawn in concentric circles. It's commonly called a magic circle. The protagonist thought, wasn't that thing one on the body of the Lazarus director a magic circle? And then he raised his hand and asked, Do people sometimes draw that on their body? Arthur said, some mages do that to quickly cast frequently used spells. MC thought, it's just like a symbol. If the formula is control, and the magic circle is a symbol, he asked, then poetry is a linguistic transformation forms? The professor asked why he thought so. He said the formula he wrote on the board was more like a blueprint for manifesting a fireball. If they consider the magic circle a symbol, then saying it out loud should be a linguistic part of it, right? Arthur thought, he's just a first year, and he's already thinking about something that even senior high-ranking magicians can think about. After that, he said, it was an impressive answer. He did well. The right words in the right place, that's the essence of poetry. Every word imbued with mana and spoken out loud carries such power. They call it the truth or the spell. That's it. The next second, he created a huge magic ball towering over him and added, not only the arrangement of carefully chosen words, but also non-verbal elements, such as speech and emotional state. The protagonist thought, this is like reading. If you think about it, no work has touched him as much as this lesson. It was not easy. And then Arthur said that he thought he had scared him enough about magic. His determination remained the same. Rowan? He said that it was. Now he was even more interested. The professor said, okay, from the next class they will start studying ancient languages. He will give each of them a book, so they must think about the nature of ancient languages. The rest of the students hung their heads in despair. Sometime later, Sophie, walking down the hall, put the book to her chest and lowering her head, said, homework after homework, endless homework. Seriously, why did she sign up for so many classes? I mean, she is one thing, but he is on another level. She heard that he had a full week of classes except for lunch breaks. The protagonist confirmed this. Studying is the most fun after all. She said that he was annoying sometimes, to be honest. Anyway, Rowan, which room is he in? He pointed his finger forward and answered, over there, the second from the end on the second floor. She noticed that he lives with Lucas. MC thought in surprise, Lucas? Sophie then said that they would see each other. He agreed and wished her a good night. After a while, he was sitting in his room and taking notes. He thought the hieroglyphs are complicated, but after deciphering them, he understands how the formula is built. Since he can't use powerful magic at the moment with his mana, maybe he should just create a magic that suits him? The next second, he created a magic fire circle in his hands and then a fireball and thought, done. He did it. Even by trial and error, if he disassembles and restores the formula like this, it will be. The next second, he fell to the ground, exhausted. After a while, Lucas entered the room and seeing the protagonist lying on the floor, asked, what is this? Why is he sleeping here? After a while, the protagonist heard a voice. It was quite a grueling ordeal for a small child, and she thought she was hiding her feelings well enough. He thought, this voice, Sienna? She said, it's her fault. No, it's the management's fault, not hers. He thought, what are they saying? Is it because of him? The voice spoke. From the first meeting, he doubted whether he should continue such intense training. Perhaps there was some potential in him, so he continued. The next second, MC opened his eyes and thought, where is he? Lucas looked at him and asked, is he awake? Is he okay? The protagonist sat up in bed and rubbed his eye. He wanted to ask what, but the next second Lucas threw himself into his arms and shouted, thank God. Does he know how surprised he was when he saw that he was unconscious? The protagonist asked who? He answered, he is Lucas von Passau, his classmate, roommate. He sat down next to him and said, he was so shocked when he found out that he fainted after training. If his father found out, he would be in big trouble. The protagonist asked, did he really faint? He answered, nothing serious. He heard that he pushed himself too hard. When he rests a little, everything will be fine. Then the protagonist asked, but why is he worried about him? He answered, because his father asked him to look after him. He was surprised. His father? He confirmed it. Oscar von Passau, vice captain of the Faith Squad. He is his father. MC thought in surprise, the son of the vice captain Oscar? And then Lucas told him to just tell his dad later that he brought him to the infirmary and looked after him all night. The protagonist thought, seeing how pure his mana was, he didn't think it was a lie. They really were alike. The protagonist nodded and said that he would do so. After that, Lucas smiled and said that he was more outgoing than he thought. Most of the freshmen mistook him for an upperclassman when they saw his face. The protagonist was surprised. An upperclassman? He pointed at himself and said that even though he looked older, he was only 12. The protagonist asked, did he start studying late? He put his hands behind his head and answered, that's not true. He wasn't late. He failed twice because he couldn't meet the attendance requirement. Of course, attendance doesn't guarantee graduation, but still. Honestly, he would have preferred not to study at all. By the way, is he sure he fainted after magic class? The room was a mess. MC thought he definitely saw the fireballs, but he didn't remember what happened next. He thought about it, and then Lucas said, it's a pity. They could have practiced swordsmanship together and looked after each other. Then the protagonist asked, Lucas, does he practice swordsmanship too? He answered, after all, his father is the vice captain of Faith. He said exactly. He thought he is 2 years older, but compared to other children, his mana is incredibly dense. He is tall, strong. I wonder how much effort it took him to become like this. He should try too. Then he asked, but it's already late for school, right? He asked, does he want to go? Someone who fainted from studying should rest. And then the protagonist asked, can he get some fresh air? He feels a little dizzy. He said that in that case, he wouldn't mind getting some fresh air and skipping classes. The protagonist said that, but he didn't think that he should skip classes just because of that. Before he could finish speaking, Lucas stood up from his seat and exclaimed, "It's a deal. The weather is nice, so they should go outside. When you have a headache, the best thing to do is get some fresh air, eat something delicious and exercise." The MC agreed with him and thought, Lucas, so that's why he was held back a year. After a while, they were walking along a busy street. Lucas, holding food in his hands, told him to eat more. He was afraid that he would fall again if he looked skinny. The protagonist then noticed a building nearby and thought that he could feel mana coming from there. He then said that he wanted to check that place out. Lucas asked, where? The magic shop? If he was interested, then they could take a look. They would go. After a while, they went inside. The protagonist looked around and thought, every item here is imbued with strong mana. Come to think of it, he has no money. He placed his hands on his waist and thought, it would be great if all the money he earned at the orphanage was his. Then Lucas looked at him and asked, what's with his expression? Doesn't he like anything? He replied, he has no money. He told him to repeat it. If he needs anything, he should just tell him. His father asked him to look after him. Then MC looked at him with admiration and looked around and asked, can he buy everything here? His classmate reached into his pants pocket and said that was impossible. He took out some coins and told him to just pick one for now. It's not customary to read books several at a time. The protagonist thought, it can't be helped. He doesn't have much money either. There must be something Lucas could buy. He then stopped near one of the items presented and thought, is this? He picked it up and thought maybe it was because the mana was so murky, but it wasn't expensive at all, if that was the case. At that moment, a store employee came up to him and said he had picked out a goetti stone. He had forgotten that his store had it. MC asked in surprise, a goetti stone? What is it for? He replied that it was just decorative. Most likely the egg inside would never hatch. The protagonist asked, what exactly was inside? He replied that he didn't know. It was said to be an item that served as a seal for an unknown creature using a magic circle. He got it from South Rhodes a long time ago, but it was still in the form it was. He thought it could be a useful magic tool, but he was wrong. The protagonist asked, a magic tool? He explained that it was the name for items filled with magic power. MC said, I see. If he breaks the seal on this egg, will something awaken? The worker waved his hand and said, theoretically it is, but most likely not. It is a powerful, unique magic. The protagonist looked at the egg in his hands and thought, unique magic. It is a very complex magic circle. If he were to transform it into a spell, it would be several times more powerful than the fireball. Then he looked at Lucas and asked what he would say. He thoughtfully replied, it looks better than the book. He could throw it or use it for punches. Then MC smiled and said that, in that case, he will take it. After a while, they left the store and the worker called after them to come again. In response, they thanked him. After that, Lucas said in surprise, so it is time already. Rowan, he must hurry. They are late. He wondered where he was going. He replied, to the coolest place in the Union. They stopped on a high hill and looked at the tower surrounded by buildings and a wall. The protagonist looked at it and said in surprise, wow. Lucas put his hands on his waist and asked, isn't it amazing? He agreed. This clock tower is the heart of the Union, right? He said, that's right. It's the headquarters of the Union, where the guild master and the commander are. The protagonist looked at him and asked, has he ever seen them? He replied that he saw the former guild master once with his father when he was little. The MC asked, what is he like? He replied, he was wearing a white suit, so he looked really cool. How should I describe it? He looked like a swan, gracefully standing among the black crows. The protagonist thought, the commander wears a white suit, right? He didn't know. All he knows is the strength of each class, which he read in books. The leader of the 7th class is an expert with outstanding skills. He can take on an entire city by himself. A leader who has other leaders under his command. An absolute who can subjugate an entire nation. And the last one, the Viceroy. The most powerful being on the continent who dared to stand shoulder to shoulder with the kings. He thought, now they are huge distant figures, but someday, he believes that he can reach this level. Then he said, an incredibly tall building. It can be seen from anywhere in the Union. Lucas noticed, that's right, it can be seen from the school too. Then the protagonist thought, what does this red arrow point to? He asked, and how should we understand this clock? Lucas thoughtfully scratched the back of his head and said, well, does he see those symbols on the outer red stripe? It is believed that these symbols represent the year. The protagonist thought, if you look closely, it looks like the symbols used in an ancient language. Then Lucas said that he also does not know how to read it just now. Before he could finish speaking, the protagonist asked, the year 262? He was surprised and then said, that's right, the year 262 of the kingdom. Then the other parts should indicate months and days. If you read the symbols, it means June 14th. MC noticed, that's right, so today is June 14th, 262, 7:20 a.m. Lucas thought, how does he know that? The protagonist thought it looked familiar. The clock tower was in the vision shown by the tree, and the time the clock showed was June 14th, 272, today, but 10 years in the future. After a while, they came to a room and Lucas told him to rest. He asked where he was going. He slung the sword over his shoulder and said that he needed to make up for the training he did with it. If he missed even one day, his body would fall apart. He would be back soon. The protagonist agreed with him and said that they would see each other later. Then he sat down on the edge of his bed and thought, he can't just ignore the vision shown by the tree. Perhaps this is not a simple illusion, but a prophecy. If so, what should he do? How can he change the future? Then he began to concentrate his energy and thought. First, he needs to collect as much information as possible about what he saw. In most of the memories, a clock tower is visible if he arranges it according to the time shown on the clock tower, like this. He was in a space filled with pictures of his memories. He stretched out his hand forward and thought. Next, he needs to fill in the gaps in chronological order. The red roof here is intact, so he will put it first. This runner died after the roof collapsed. Then this memory occurs, organizing the flow in this way and collecting experience. If he remembers the vision shown by the tree again, this is the future. He desperately looked at the memory and thought, Sophie, Lucas, the elder Sienna. He let go of his trembling hand and thought he should know his class at that time. Among the fragments, only one contained his image. He found a point. He looked at this memory again and thought, from this angle the class icon is not visible. Now he should be able to change the angle. With these thoughts, he stretched out his hand forward. The space was covered with a crack. He seemed to be in a memory and thought, okay, now he can understand. He turned around and saw himself at an older age. He saw a hole in his chest and thought, in 10 years, he will die. In the present, he opened his eyes and thought, is this a warning from the tree? The death of the Alliance means the death of a kingdom and continent, the end of the world. This is no different from the extinction of all races. The tree is a product of black magic, turning people into mana, and the sacrificed people stood between the world of life and death. This person is probably to blame for the unrest and forced him to intervene. Then he sat down at the table and thought that he could not be sure that this vision would really come true. But in order to make sure that it would be false, he needed to create a reality different from behavior. First of all, himself. Since he did not know his rank, what badge he wore did not matter. Either he would not become a member of the Union at all, or he would become an administrative employee in a red suit. If so, he needed a white suit. After a while, Lucas said, Rowan, the teacher Daphne asks him to come to the teacher's office when he comes to school. He put on a tie and asked, only he? He confirmed it and asked, what? The protagonist asked, isn't he returning to school after a long break? He waved his hand and said that she did not tell him anything. He will go. They will see each other in class. The protagonist silently looked after him and wondered why the teacher Daphne. After a while, they asked for a table. Daphne asked, Rowan, is he feeling better? He still doesn't look well. In response, he thanked her for her concern and said that he was already feeling better. Lucas told him that he was grateful that she had issued him a sick leave. She replied that he shouldn't bother himself. Since these were optional classes, he could cancel them at any time. Doesn't he want to make any changes? He smiled and answered negatively, adding that he liked everything as it was. All the classes he had attended were enjoyable, and he was looking forward to the ones he hadn't yet. She sighed and apologized for pushing him too hard. He smiled again and said that he was really okay. He would be more careful now. Daphne said, okay, if he ever needed help, he could come anytime. In response, he thanked her. After a while, he was walking down the hallway and looked out the window and thought, he should attend as many classes as possible. He can train as naturally as breathing, so he will be fine. That's what he should. With that in mind, he opened the door and thought he should help his friends grow with him. He walked into the classroom like that. A few students were standing near the entrance and said at the same time, Rowan. They asked how he was feeling. The student said that they were very worried when they heard that he was unconscious. He said that he was fine now. He thanked them for caring. He thought if they grew stronger with him, his friends would be able to survive. Then he asked everyone if they didn't mind, could they do him a favor? They were surprised. A favor? He said so. Isidore, Mirsa, Rian, Creston, Edgerin, Darian, Tirik, Calathos. They don't go to fencing classes, do they? They confirmed it, confused. Then he said, Flora, Sebastian, Epona, Demas, Sabrina, Vela, and maybe Lucas don't study the basics of magic. Sophie scratched her cheek thoughtfully and said, remembering all of them in one day is impressive. Then she asked, but why did he suddenly ask about the classes? He put his hand to his chest and said that he had already tried both. They were good classes. He would like them all to go to it with him. Isn't he asking too many questions? A student with a loving look asked, too many? Of course, fine. The others also agreed. Then one of the students raised his hand and said that he was not sure about the magic class. The protagonist said, about magic. He understands why he avoids it. But what if you think about it another way? Lucas put his hands in his pants pockets and asked what it was. He said that he thought showing him directly would help him understand faster. Lucas, would he come to magic class at least once today, even if he felt like he was being lied to? He answered hesitantly, if only today. Then the protagonist smiled and thanked everyone. He said that he was already looking forward to it. Lucas thought it was very difficult to refuse this face. Sometime later in magic class, the professor thought, so it was true that Rowan advised everyone to attend magic classes. Then he asked, Rowan, is he feeling better? In response, he thanked him for asking and said that he was already feeling better. Arthur said that this was the first time that magic classes were so lively. Rowan, they say that it was all thanks to him? He answered that he wanted to show his friends that magic is not as far away as they think. The professor clarified, not as far away? He thought, I wonder what else he realized in just one day. Then he scratched his beard thoughtfully and asked, how is he going to show it? He raised his hand and asked if he could come up on stage for a minute. He replied, of course, he could try whatever he wanted, but he shouldn't strain himself. After that, he walked towards the stairs. Lucas looked after him and asked, what kind of fearless child is this? Sophie noticed that he was unusual. Meanwhile, outside the door, Daphne, addressing Lazarus, remarked, "He must be the busiest man in the Union. It was something to see him at school this morning. Was it because of Rowan?" He replied that he had come for various reasons. Watching the school was also part of his duties. Then they looked at Sienna in surprise, and he asked what brought her here. He thought she was off duty. She replied that she still had a task assigned to her by Vice Captain Oscar. And it wasn't just her. Wasn't this the first time that Diego the teacher had watched a class other than fencing? He waved his hand and awkwardly replied, "Well, do they know?" He was curious since everyone suddenly showed interest in the magic lesson. Then Daphne turned her attention to the principal, and he thoughtfully asked, how could he ignore the arrival of the director of the administrative bureau? And then she asked, please, they should watch quietly so as not to disrupt the course of the lesson. After that, she slightly opened the door to the classroom and saw a huge fireball that MC created. At this moment, Arthur directed a protective barrier at the rest of the students. Watching the protagonist, he thought, a fireball is not magic that can be shown at this age. Not only is it outside the curriculum, even a fire arrow, which is one level lower than a fireball, can only be shown by fifth-year students, and only the talented ones among them. But he is still a child. The next second, the principal thoughtfully said that he has never seen a fireball emitting such pure energy. It is like watching Zion's holy magic. Diego folded his arms and said, the density of the fireball is significant for its size, and it is stable. Lazarus thoughtfully noted that it is not just stable, it is beyond common sense. True, this is magic that cannot be used at such an age, but the fireball is, in essence, simple magic. But to maintain the same size and heat and at the same time make it hover in one place, then it is no longer a simple fireball, but a completely different magic. Sienna added that she noticed his exceptional ability to use mana from the first time she saw him. The director added that he heard that he grew up in difficult conditions in an orphanage. How can he have such magical power? Sienna added that she heard that he fainted literally the day before. He must not have fully recovered yet. Is it possible to leave him like this? Daphne nodded and noted that she was right. It was not her place to say, but she thought that they should stop him now. At this moment, the protagonist continued to maintain the fireball and thought, focusing on providing mana is more important than the size. The flame should not become unstable due to an uncontrollable amount of mana. By the way, the barrier that teacher Arthur created is very interesting. The shape is similar to the pit he saw at the orphanage that day, but the nature and purpose are different. I wonder what will happen if the fireball falls into it. Then he noticed teacher Arthur. He is truly amazing. What is the name of this magic? The professor looked at him and thought it should not require such concentration, but he keeps asking him while maintaining the hovering fireball. Even he is now fully focused. Then he directed his energy towards the fireball. MC thought, a fireball. It sank into the barrier created by the professor and then dissolved. The others opened their eyes in surprise. After that, the professor looked at the protagonist again and thought that he did not know whether to scold or praise this impudent child. Then Lazarus entered the room and said, good job, Rowan. In response to his question, this magic is Dean Arthur's unique spell. It's called the Azure Flame Barrier. The protagonist looked at the professor and said, the Azure Flame Barrier? What a great name. Arthur asked, what is the meaning of the name? Besides, he didn't come up with it. The protagonist said, then he got a great name as a gift. Then the professor said, well then, Rowan, does the magic he showed have a name? He was surprised. What? It's just a fireball. The professor said, everyone here knows something is wrong, and he should know better than anyone that it's not just a fireball. Then he looked ahead and confirmed it. He hasn't thought about it yet. He is seriously thinking about the name. In response, the professor folded his arms and laughed lightly, thinking he was going to point out the danger, but it seems he's preoccupied with giving it a name. And then Lazarus walked forward and said, as the headmaster, he can't let this go unnoticed. How did he do something so dangerous, Rowan? He wanted to know his intention. MC smiled and said, firstly, he was confident that he could control fire. He thought that Arthur, the teacher, would be watching him. The professor asked, so showing the fireball was his only goal? The protagonist confirmed it. He wanted to convey confidence to his friends. They might be interested in magic, but were afraid to try. Arthur clarified, were they afraid? He said that they would be lucky if they wielded the fireball before graduation, but he had already done it. He wanted to show them that it was possible. Arthur thought it was because he was a genius, although he couldn't say it out loud because it was embarrassing. Had he always limited the potential of children? To think that this little kid made him realize it. Then the MC asked if he didn't mind. Could he stay here for a little while longer? He still had something he wanted to show his friends. The teacher agreed with him, and then the protagonist asked, Lucas, could he step outside for a minute? He pointed at himself in surprise and asked, him. As he walked up to the stage, he asked, why him? The protagonist pointed his hand forward and looked at his comrade and said that he would help him try casting a spell. He wondered again, him? He said, magic and swordsmanship work with mana. A person like him who trains every day can definitely do it. Lucas said, but how can he use magic? The protagonist said, since he hasn't trained much in magic, they will try a spell. It should be easier than magic circles or spells. Now he should repeat after him, Ignis Vestigius Sperantis. deficientis, imago ore coloris deficientis. Lucas tried to repeat, MC corrected him, and then asked in surprise, is this the first time he hears the ancient language? He is already a third year in the first year. Lucas asked in surprise, he does not know? Then the protagonist said that first he will teach him the meaning. Understanding the meaning is very important in the ancient language. It sounds like this. Footsteps of a quietly breathing flame in the wake of the afterword of air dying from heat. The next second, Lucas jumped in fear on the spot and MC added, colliding with each other without hesitation, appearing before his eyes. Then he thought in surprise, why? It shouldn't be like this. Why didn't it work? Why does no one understand? If they were stuck at the beginning, what to do with the remaining 10 years? What should he do now? He created a spell, simple enough for Lucas to perform, but the other children, even Sophie, seemed unable to understand. Then Lucas called the protagonist. After that, Arthur put his hands on the student's shoulders and said, Rowan, please, he must understand that this is his first lesson. He seemed to understand the spell, but could he teach him the spell formula? After that, the protagonist wrote the formula on the board with telekinesis. The students looked at it in admiration. Then Arthur, laughing slightly, said, so he really can use telekinetic magic. After that, the protagonist turned around and said that he had written everything. Arthur concentrated energy in his hand, and then directed the barrier at the students. Lazarus, coming closer to the board, asked him, where did he see this spell formula? He answered, he didn't take it from anywhere. He saw what Arthur's teacher wrote and changed it in his own way. He noticed that it was more than just a modification. MC said when he worked on it, he felt that this approach suited him better. Arthur asked, did he mean to say that he created a new spell formula? The protagonist lowered his head in embarrassment, and then Arthur said, it seems like this conversation will take some time, so they should arrange a separate meeting. Head of the academic department, Daphne, is she okay with it? She smiled and said, of course. Lazarus then put his hands on the protagonist's shoulders, thanked him for showing them the spell form. They will talk again soon. He agreed. And then Lazarus turned to Sienna and asked her name. Soldier? She replied that she was Sienna from the Faith Squad, sir. He asked if he could ask her to take over the rest of the class. She was surprised. What? Arthur said that he didn't care if they practiced on their own or if she taught them swordsmanship. She agreed, and then Diego added, Sienna, please, she should take his next lesson too. She also agreed to this, after which Arthur dispelled the spell. Approaching the exit, he asked, well, are they going? When the other adults left the office, Sienna slammed the table and, introducing herself, said that she was a runner of the Faith Squad. She would be temporarily leading the rest of the classes. They could consider this a normal class, and everyone without exception should participate in it. She sighed and thought about what to do with this. After a while, one of the council members said, an emergency call to the committee. This hasn't happened for several years, right? The man next to him noted that this was his first time. The next second, Lazarus said, the agenda for today's meeting concerns the educational policy of the trade union school. But first, they should start with the story of Rowan, which served as the reason for this meeting. Arthur said, the fireball is already a familiar magic, but he interpreted it completely differently. Although his destructive power is weak, he is close to unique magic, and the fact that he created a new spell formula is completely unprecedented. The teacher asked, is such a thing possible? Arthur said that he has already proven it, and he and the others have directly confirmed it. Lazarus said thoughtfully, the Administration Bureau will have to study this and analyze it further, but for now they should consider this a new approach. The council member said, even if he is an unprecedented genius, he is still only a freshman. Age-appropriate education is extremely important. The girl asked, doesn't he need individual education? The man asked, is she proposing specialized education for one person? How can this be called public education? She said that they might lose the talent of talented people. Then how about early admission to the union? The man shouted, this is absurd. Doesn't the union only look at ability? In any case, it seems that it is necessary to move on to proper practical education. Are there any other features that they should know? The next second, Arthur thoughtfully said, perhaps there is a problem with character. The man was surprised. Character? He heard that he was rumored to be a polite child in general. He confirmed it was true, but it seemed like he needed to be more considerate of other people's feelings. The union is an organization that strictly values ability and achievement. With his talent, it is obvious that he will stand out, so he has nothing to worry about when he joins. The problem lies in joining itself. The last hurdle of the entrance exam is the interview. What this person values most is character. But then the director said, today Rowan's intention to motivate the children was good, but it could potentially cause a feeling of alienation. The council member added, if the level is suitable, they can develop together, but right now the gap is too big. He is a child who invents magic on his own, right? Daphne said, but is it right to discuss the character of a child who is only 10 years old? Lazarus asked, how about talking to him? She put her hand to her chest and said, okay. Then they should call Rowan and listen to what he has to say. After a while, Daphne said, he can come in, Rowan. He has a gloomy expression. Is it because Lucas couldn't manifest magic earlier? The protagonist sat down at the table and nodded, confirming it. It was frustrating that he couldn't appreciate his friend's abilities. Arthur told him not to be upset, learning magic was not an easy task. The protagonist replied, that's why he thinks about different things. He also makes hypotheses. He wondered, what kind of hypothesis? He replied, just as his friends treated magic lessons as a break, perhaps Lucas also tends to easily give up on things he doesn't like. Or maybe because he picked up a sword too early, his brain developed only in this direction. Maybe he was asking him to focus, without taking into account his personal circumstances. Such thoughts came to his mind. And he hopes he is wrong, but Arthur asked, is there anything else? He looked down and said that he was worried that Lucas or other friends might be sick somewhere. The teacher said that he didn't think he should worry about that. The MC asked happily, is that true? He confirmed it. He could assure him of that. The protagonist smiled and said that he was so glad that his friends weren't sick. Lazarus asked why he wanted to teach his friends magic so badly. The protagonist looked down again and said that it didn't have to be magic. He just wanted to become stronger with his friends and become members of an alliance together. The council member then said, Rowan, they've heard enough. This is not the place for scolding, so he shouldn't worry. He should go and rest. After a while, Daphne, while filling out a document, said, the new educational direction that will be applied to the first-year students should focus on balance first and foremost. They must balance the children by establishing individual academic abilities based on outstanding children, and the social and empathic aspects must be in line with average children. The principal said in a puzzled tone, it seems that the Union School is facing a new transition period, with freshmen at the center. Then they must begin with a review of the curriculum. Sometime later, during fencing class, Diego folded his arms and said that from today on, fencing and learning magic are mandatory subjects. MC was happy to think that the school policy changed in just one day. Then the teacher added, and from now on, active union members will participate in classes as teaching assistants. This is a valuable opportunity to learn about experiences from the field, so they should work hard. Roan, Sophie, Lucas, the three of them will conduct autonomous training, taking turns sparring with each other. The protagonist asked, the three of them? Lucas smiled and remarked that it sounded tempting. He would like to meet him in a duel at least once. Sophie clenched her fist and thought that this was a chance to see the results of their training. Lucas then asked, does he have a grudge against her or something? MC replied that he doesn't, I think. Then he shouted, Roan, they should fight him. Sophie added, then it was her turn. After a while, the wooden sword flew away. Sophie, breathing heavily, lowered her gaze and thought, and again his movements showed that he was reading her sword path. But today she saw a small gap. If she trains more, the next time she will be able to win. After that, the protagonist shook her hand and said that it was a good duel. She agreed with him, and then added that she was confident that she could win this duel. Run, is there something wrong with her swordsmanship? He raised his index finger and said that the flow of mana seems a little irregular. If she changes the direction, it will be better than now. She clarified. Direction? Lucas spread his arms out to the sides and explained. He said that there is no need to just swing your arms clumsily. She must be precise. She needs to decide on the direction of the mana, and perhaps because she lacks strength. She indignantly asked what he said. MC said that he is right, but Lucas interrupted him and told her to look. Rowan agreed with her. She yelled at him to shut up and then asked, but what should she do? He replied, well, there is some truth to that, but it is not entirely true. She does not lack strength at all. He raised his index finger and said, now she distributes mana equally between her upper and lower body. If she increases the proportion of mana in her lower body to make it stronger. Lucas added, that's what he is talking about. Her legs are getting tangled because she is only trying to swing hard. She yelled indignantly. He was indignant. Hey, why did she suddenly rush at him? She said, if he is so great, he should show it with his skills. He replied, so she should not regret it. Diego sighed and asked, are they finally going to spar? He wondered. Were the adults worried for nothing? After a while, Daphne, sitting opposite the protagonist, asked how he was doing at school. He answered, well, he likes the classes. She took the cup with a drink in her hands and asked if he managed to get rid of his burdensome thoughts. He confirmed it. Everyone has their strengths and weaknesses. He just didn't understand it before. She noted that it was right. They are all different, after all. She was glad that he understood it. How are his friends? He answered, they are all great. They encourage him and often share treats with him. But when some girls make requests that are difficult to understand, she asked, for example? He answered, they asked to go for a walk together after class or go shopping with them. They seem unrelated to studies. Daphne thought this was the age when children were very curious about the opposite gender. She covered her mouth with her hand, hiding a smile, and said that she understood. What does he do in such situations? He answered that he says that instead of doing this, why don't they study together? She thought, what a cold attitude. Then she raised her index finger and said, so among the girls, there is no one he can get along with or feel interested in. Someone who is more interesting to him or... He thought about it, and then noticed that Sophie was different from the others. She is an excellent swordsman, and among the first years, Sophie is the only one who can create flames. Daphne asked, are he and Sophie close? He answered, after learning about her personal circumstances, he also began to care about her. She wondered, what kind of personal circumstances? He said, Sophie is an illegitimate child from the famous Pobble family, famous for their swordsmanship. Her father sent her here to strengthen ties with the Alliance. Daphne thought that this is a situation that any knowledgeable person would be aware of. She then said that this must be a big problem for Sophie. The protagonist nodded and said that she is his friend from whom he can learn a lot. Daphne asked, "What about Lucas?" She heard that the three of them usually help each other. He said that Lucas also has many qualities that he can learn from. He is exceptionally good at physical strength. By the way, he had a hypothesis about Lucas in the past few days. Since he trains so much in swordsmanship, he wondered if his brain had turned into muscles, causing him to dislike studying. Daphne said in confusion that she understood, and then the protagonist smiled and added, "He can't let him fail anymore, so as a friend, he will guide him. This is the behavior of a person with good character, right?" She awkwardly agreed. "Right, with good character. This is a very good way of thinking." She thought, indeed, he is a child with a unique way of thinking. After a while, Arthur looked at the protagonist and said that he can't just say that his physique is terrible. Considering his ability, one would think that he has already received 10 gifts and is missing one. He answered, but he wants to wield even stronger magic than he does now. Isn't there a way to improve his constitution? Arthur answered, with special magic tools, he can strengthen his magic power or use his accumulated mana to wield powerful magic. MC clapped his hands and said that both options sounded great. The professor said, but if it was as easy as it seemed, everyone would become a mage. Magic tools that can be bought with money are often disposable or of low quality. They are not very useful for the magic he wields. The protagonist desperately asked, then what kinds of elixirs are there? He answered, some restore magic power, others alleviate physical ailments. There are also elixirs that increase mana deficiency or even improve constitution. They come in a wide variety and have significant effects, making them extremely rare. The protagonist thought they are similar to the luteal fruit, that's why they are consumed. Then the professor added, however, he cannot guarantee that there will be an elixir that will suit him, but it is too early to be disappointed, so he should not be sad. With that, he took off the necklace from his neck and said that this is one of the elixirs that he owns. He received it from the ruler a long time ago for his achievements. Perhaps this elixir was supposed to go to him. MC was surprised. Could he really get something so valuable? Arthur handed him the elixir and said that it is not as powerful as he thought. It is okay, so he can take it. He replied that in that case, he will gratefully accept it. He looked at the elixir in his hand and then swallowed it with a sharp movement. The next second, Arthur noticed that it did not have any effect. The protagonist tapped his chest and confirmed it. The teacher said that he did not think that it would completely improve his condition, but he did not expect it to be so ineffective. Shameful. MC looked away and thought, as expected, instead of looking for ways to improve his physique, it would be better to rethink what he can do. Manipulating the movement of mana, deciphering the spell formula, might be a more suitable way to use magic. He then smiled and said that it was okay, Teacher Arthur. He was grateful for his concern. From now on, he will have to study even harder. Half a year later, the first-year magic graduation exam, the magic room. The protagonist created fire in his hands and then turned it into balls. Lazarus, watching this, said that since he directly manipulated mana, it was possible. Arthur remarked that this was an amazing talent. At this rate, he would even be able to combine different types of magic. MC clenched his fists and asked, it looked impressive, but would such weak magic be useful in an alliance? The professor held his hand out and said that the fact that he did this without using spells proved that his abilities were equivalent to a 4th class. Lazarus pointed out that this was true. No matter what magic he displayed, others would consider him Rowan, a high-level mage. For now, he didn't need to worry about destructive power. He should focus on his strengths and develop his abilities. He asked how he should study further. Arthur said that he just continued doing what he was doing. For now, he should try to deconstruct and manifest the spell formula up to the 4th class according to his own interpretation. Lazarus said that he would help him gain free access to the ancient texts stored in the administration archives. And Rowan, it would be better for both him and them if he kept silent about his talent. He was surprised, and Arthur, turning to the director, said, since he brought it up, how about making a pact right now, since there are only 2 of them here? He replied that it sounded like a good idea. They shook hands, casting a spell. The protagonist wondered, what are they doing during his exam? Another year passed after that. The director, sitting in a meeting, said that he would like to express his gratitude to everyone who attended the meeting, despite it being an emergency. Although this matter falls under his jurisdiction, it is not only his concern, so he felt it necessary to resolve it. Diego said that from now on, the school will not teach Rowan movement techniques, physical combat, and swordsmanship, which involve the use of mana. The director added that he must say that he is curious about the reason for such a sudden statement. Why is that? Diego explained that Rowan wants to join the union. Now that he is a 3rd year, if he wants practical experience, it is better to learn the basics there. Arthur said that is to say that he wants to encourage him to focus exclusively on magic. He said that this is what Rowan wants above all else. Arthur said, Rowan is a talent that should be greedy for, but he is more generous than expected. He answered, it is because he did not take this position out of personal ambition. From now on, he will focus exclusively on physical training. Then Sienna raised her hand and asked, Senior, How does he rate Rowan's level? He replied, once he draws the sword, he will pass the first stage of the Union entrance exam. Lazarus was surprised. So high? He confirmed it. He has natural talent. A little lacking in destructive power, but it will improve with time. Daphne asked, what is his level as a mage? Arthur replied, as a mage, Rowan, he can no longer teach him anything. Currently, Rowan can freely use first and second class magic. To be honest, he can understand the formulas of third class magic. Daphne looked at him in surprise, and Arthur added, since he is such a smart child, he treats complex spell formulas like toys, and he is only a third year. After a while, Arthur said, this will end today's lesson, and they must not forget to finish their assignments before the next lesson. And Rowan, he should drop by to see him for a minute. After a while, the protagonist approached him and said he called him Teacher Arthur. He confirmed it and said that he didn't know if he had heard of it, but there was an academic exchange of magic with Schwerin this time. It seemed like he, Rowan, would have to participate in it. He said that this was the first time he had heard of this event. It seemed like it was not held regularly. Arthur said that it used to be held occasionally for the exchange of ideas. It naturally disappeared when the era of magic began to fade. The protagonist said, then, what was the reason for it being held this time, all of a sudden? Arthur nodded and said that it was because of him. It must be that rumors of his exceptional magic abilities had reached Schwerin. Among the 7 countries, Schwerin is the only autonomous principality that contains a magic tower and relies on the development of magic as its main strength. Since the master of the tower is also the head of the principality, it is a closed space, and it would not be an exaggeration to say that all information about magic comes to Schwerin. The protagonist asked, isn't he also from Schwerin, a teacher? He replied that he had studied high-level magic until the 3rd grade, then joined the Union. MC said, then he should have an idea of what motivates Schwerin. He scratched his beard thoughtfully and replied, above all, curiosity. He didn't know how much information had reached them, but assuming they knew all the information that had been revealed on the surface, a 4th grade mage had appeared in the Union school. The protagonist scratched his head awkwardly and objected, but he wasn't a 4th grade mage. The teacher asked, isn't magic only spoken of in terms of strength? He folded his arms and added, the main purpose of this academic conference is to directly confirm unprecedented talent. In terms of pure magical research, they want to gain something too. In other words, Schwerin wants him to act as a representative. MC asked, what if he doesn't go? The professor thought for a moment and then said, in a way it would be better, but when he hears the conditions it will be hard to refuse. He asked, what is it? He replied, on the condition that their side arranges the schedule and provides the venue, they offered an elixir. The protagonist was surprised. An elixir. He thought it was a legendary potion that instantly restores energy and magic power, even to the dying, and sometimes permanently enhances physical abilities. Then he said, if they could replace his physique. Arthur held his hand out in front of him and said that it was unlikely, so he shouldn't worry. The protagonist asked, so they were just handing it out? Arthur said, since it was an academic conference where they would discuss magic, they would probably hold a magic formula contest and give it to the worthy winner. The protagonist said they would give the elixir if he won the verbal battle. But if he drank the elixir, he thought, wait, even if he won, the elixir wouldn't be his right away. Arthur smiled and said, that's right. If he goes as a representative and wins, the elixir will be his. He said that in that case he will accept it with gratitude. A few days later, on the day of the magic academic exchange, the Alliance side, the Schwerin side, Arthur put his hand forward and said that he welcomed them. Bert, the Schwerin mage, took off his hood and said, Professor Arthur, long time no see. He replied, Bert, he must be tired after a long journey. MC thought, there's no one his age here. They all have considerable magic power. And then Arthur looked at the others and asked, what about these young people? Bert said that these 3 younger ones want to receive guidance from him. He thought that earlier it was reported that only Rowan and a few of their mages would participate from the Alliance. It seems that the Schwerin magic still wants to create the impression that they are strong, even better. Then he smiled and asked, what guidance can he offer? Although it is a knowledge-sharing conference, they feel sorry that there is only one child worthy of this event in the Union School. Bert told him not to say that. If he learned from him, then he is equal to 100 magicians. He has high expectations. Hearing these words, the protagonist smiled, and then Arthur shook Bert's hand and said, well then, they should rest. They will meet in the conference room in the afternoon. He agreed with him. A few hours later, a female student asked, is the elder Rowan really going to face 3 magicians alone? Another female student asked, what if he gets hurt? She countered, that won't happen. The elder Rowan, he must destroy them all in one go. Lucas, who was sitting next to them, covered his ears from the screams and said, come on guys, this is not a competition where someone will get hurt. This is a magic discussion between intellectuals, something like that. The student raised her index finger and said, Senior Lucas, even verbal battles are battles. If Senior Rowan hears harsh words and gets emotionally hurt, is that also hurt? He was surprised. Did she know him? She replied, of course, he always walks behind Senior Rowan. He then said, well, no one can hurt Rowan, so she shouldn't worry. Sophie, who who was sitting next to him, sighed and remarked that it wasn't like him. He asked, when do juniors get worried, since he doesn't have to help? She was surprised, really. She then looked ahead and noticed it seemed to be starting. Daphne came to the podium and announced they were starting the Magic Academic Exchange Conference. Representatives from both sides, please, they must come. The next second, the students took out a poster with Rowan's name on it and cheered. Daphne said, before the main discussion began, she would explain the format. Each representative will present their topic in turn. They can continue this topic with questions and answers by writing a magic formula. The first to speak will be Yuli Marco from Schwerin, followed by Rowan from the Union School. They will start with the presentation of Rowan's topic. The next second, the protagonist put his hand to his chest and, introducing himself, said that he is a third-year student of the Union School. The first topic he would like to introduce is telekinesis. The Schwerin magicians looked at him in surprise. Bert thought about it. In the first round, it is customary to establish dominance, boldly demonstrate the achievement of your organization, but he deliberately chose first-class magic, and telekinesis at that. The mage asked, is this a distortion of rumors? This was absurd. They came all this way to see this level. Yuli then bowed and apologized with a grin and said, but telekinesis seems below the level of this discussion. I wonder if the Rowan student is trying to make fun of them? The protagonist replied he would not think of mocking the seniors. Even though it is basic magic, telekinesis contains deep principles that he would like to discuss. Yuli said, even if telekinesis has some depth, it is still just telekinesis. Isn't it a waste of time? The MC asked. Isn't it natural to devote time and effort to researching the principles and truths of the world? His opponent replied, so what aspect of telekinesis does he think they should study? He replied thoughtfully, he doesn't quite understand what he is talking about. Should he ask what topic the senior has prepared? He replied, judging by the level of this discussion, a fireball would be appropriate. The protagonist was surprised. A fireball would be appropriate? He replied, of course, it might not be easy for the young Rowan, but considering the importance of today's meeting, how about squeezing some wisdom out of Rowan? Arthur, watching this, thought, I wonder how much information has leaked out. It seems they know about the fireball that Rowan used. MC then asked, then, should they consider telekinesis and fireballs together? His rival was surprised. Together? He confirmed it. He thinks it would be wise to discuss a combination of these two spell formulas. Yuli sighed and said that he didn't understand what he meant by combining them. The next second, the protagonist used telekinesis to lift the chalk into the air. His rival was surprised. He didn't say a single word. He gritted his teeth and thought, he can do telekinesis too. He then moved his hand forward and they both began writing a spell on the board. One of the mages asked what kind of spell formula this was. Another magician said that he thought it was impossible, but he didn't just combine the two magics on the spot, did he? Daphne then said, now both sides explain their spell formulas and proceed to the Q&A. First up, Schwerin's side. Yuli said, as they can see, this is the spell formula for telekinesis and fireball. It is a standard magic firmly rooted since the era of great mages, with no possibility of further decomposition or combination. That's all. Daphne noticed that it was a firm and clear statement. Then, they will listen to how Rowan interprets it. MC walked forward and said, telekinesis is a basic magic that anyone who has mana can use. He wanted to discuss with the elders that this magic relies too much on magical power. But he was inspired by the suggestion of the elder Yuli, combining telekinesis and fireball. He wrote two new spell formulas. The first is to control a fireball using telekinesis, and the second is to turn an object controlled by telekinesis into a fireball. In the next second, he turned the chalk that was hanging in the air into a fireball. The others looked at him in confusion. Arthur thought, for those who don't know about Rowan's abilities, the magic he just demonstrated was amazing. Not just talent, but also the vast knowledge that this little kid has is also amazing. The protagonist then added, the essence of telekinesis is in the air. The professor thought that they were having a hard time understanding Rowan's explanation. He then added, so he broke this process and replaced it with individual magic, and substituted it into the fireball spell formula. Yuli wondered, what is he talking about? Then MC turned to his opponent and said, this is what he thinks about these two topics. I wonder what his opinion is, senior? If there is a truth that he hasn't understood, please let him know. He looked at the board and thought, even if he can't do it, he should at least understand what he was saying. He can't stand being humiliated by such a child. There's no way he could do what this kid did. As a representative of Schwerin, he can't give in. He then screamed. Blood started to flow from his nose, and he began to fall to the ground, exhausted. After a while, Bert handed the box with the elixir to the protagonist and smiled and congratulated him. It was very nice to see him participating in such a discussion with the Schwerin mages. In response, the protagonist thanked him. He added that if he was planning on consuming this, he would advise him to wait a little longer. If he took it too early, there might be side effects. MC replied that he understood. Okay, if he drank it after he graduated from high school, he said that time would be fine. After that, the protagonist looked at the elixir and thought, 2 years until graduation. Hello, she is Rita, a third-year student at the Union School, and she has been in love with Rowan for 3 years. She guarantees that there is not a single student who does not like Rowan. Not only has he received countless confessions, but more than half of her friends entered the Union specifically because of him. She knows that she is not the type of girl that is suitable for him. Until now she was content with watching him from the sidelines. But she decided to be brave. Today, the last day of their 3rd year, she's going to confess to Rowan. After a while, the MC apologized to her. For him, love is to keep those who have passed away in your heart, nothing else. She desperately said, why is he speaking so abruptly? She is truly in love with him. He replied, okay. Can this feeling be called true love? She was surprised, holding the letter in her hands. He added, people who are truly in love usually have symptoms similar to mental illness. Excessive joy, euphoria, compassion, longing, anticipation, fear, doubt, jealousy, confusion, even anger. She doesn't feel that kind of passion, Rita. He doesn't deny her feelings. Of course, it's possible if she's attracted to his appearance or circumstance, and she's felt physical changes, she might feel tension or excitement, but should we call it love? He thinks it's closer to admiration. She should look into her heart. If she still thinks it's love, that's something they could talk about more. Constructive conversation is always welcome. She looked at him emotionlessly and thought, she feels like her head has been hit, but not physically. Hi, she's Rita. Today she was rejected by a guy she's been in love with for 3 years, but she doesn't regret anything. Confessing her love to the one she likes is a very brave and meaningful act, isn't it? With the spring breeze, her first love, and the 3rd year passed. After some time, the teacher said that today the director of the union, Lazarus, would speak for them at a special lecture on career guidance. He would share important information that would be useful to them, future graduates, so they should listen carefully. The students began to applaud, and he walked out on stage in front of them with a small smile. He finished telling his story and said that this was the end of the introductory part of the lecture. If they had any questions, they could ask them, and he would try to answer them in detail. The student raised his hand and said that crowds of people come to the exam every year. Then why is there a shortage of specialists in the union? He said that only talented people who have managed to increase their wealth and become famous get into the union. It is not easy to give this up for the sake of peace and the well-being of the people. He allowed the next question to be asked, and the student raised his hand. He asked, what about the conditions? Salary, social guarantees, reputation? He said that their salaries are such that they can fully concentrate on their tasks, and they always help. After all, the union is called the sword and shield of the kingdom, so they receive the direct mandate of the king. Regardless of rank, union members have authority on par with the local authorities of the kingdom or any institution of the 6th province. After all, their powers are based on the will of the king. The student was surprised by what he heard and quietly said that it was even cooler than he thought. Rowan raised his hand and said that they only take talented people. However, do they become stronger within the union? He thought that there was very little time left before graduation. He devoted all his time to studying magic, relying on the instructions of the teachers. However, one cannot stop there, because he is not yet perfect. Lazarus called him by name and asked if he was already thinking about what would happen after entering. Without a doubt, it will be so. He thought that the director's words helped him to be sure of the correctness of his choice and returned to his studies with renewed vigor. After that, he read the book and thought that Sienna the Elder said that his abilities were akin to those of the ancient elves. According to ancient texts, they were strong in managing spirits, not the elements. They didn't need to summon the wind because the elves controlled its servants. To light a fire, it was enough to give a command to the spirits of flame. The water spirits asked to pour down rain or turn water into ice. So, how did these elves lose their powers? He noticed something and thought that he seemed to have found the answer. In the times of the world tree and the great monsters, the light and dark elves sometimes united, sometimes opposed each other. However, after the death of the roar, they lost the ability to summon spirits. For a long time, the world fell apart and reunited again, and eventually people came to power. Then the elves became a rare species. It's an interesting story, but he still didn't know anything about his power. He can say with confidence that the other world is not spirits, but mana. After some time, Arthur, with a slightly surprised expression on his face, asked if he was interested in what black magic is. The protagonist said that he tried to find information about it himself, but came across only basic information. He said with a thoughtful expression that it was not surprising. The grave factions that use black magic had become enemies of the Alliance relatively recently. He said with a sad expression that he had seen Rethal's ritual, but it was written in an ancient language. He did not know how he managed to achieve such an effect. He asked if the only difference was mana. He agreed with a surprised expression, and he said that he could not see mana the same way as he did. However, he could tell that the Dark Alliance and the like used dark mana, unlike them. He wondered what that meant. That dirty glow was dark mana. He asked what it was. Arthur said that if mana created their world, then dark mana represented evil. Did he know about the demonic realm? He agreed and said that it was based on dark mana and that demons also used it. However, the grave drew power from them. Sometimes ordinary people noticed a clouding of mana. He said that dark mana easily penetrates negative emotions. He asked why then do black mages use it? He said it was too early for such questions. He could only say that it was one of the sources of power, A few months later, Sophie called MC's name loudly and asked if he was really not going to the hairdresser's. He looked out of the window and said that he was fine as is. She said that no one doubted it. He was the best after all. Lucas looked at her with a confused look and said nothing. She noticed this and asked why he was looking at her. He said that he had just turned away and she was already there. She said that he shouldn't make people laugh. After all, he hadn't taken his eyes off her. He looked at them with a smile and she grabbed his ear and said that they were leaving. If he changed his mind, he should catch up with them. He waved his hand at them, agreed, and said that they should go ahead. He thought that the two had become very close. He didn't even notice how time passed. He looked at the elixir in the box and thought that he said that he would drink it by the end of his studies. Earlier, Lucas said that, by the way, his father would come to the ceremony. If he saw him like this, he would definitely make a scandal. Sophie said that her family was unlikely to come, but he still needed to look good. He thought that he didn't have a family, so in this regard, it was easier. He started shaking his head and thought that now they were his family, and he had to protect them. It was not only about the magic that they taught him here. He remembered what Pauline told him before leaving and thought that he would never be alone. He opened the bottle of elixir and drank it. He felt the energy and thought that, although his constitution had not changed, after taking the elixir, he began to see mana more clearly. He looked at the stone next to him and thought that years had passed, but this stone was still the same. Is it really about the elixir? Now he can see mana in more detail. It seems like he can break this ritual. He created many magic circles and this egg began to crack. The egg continued to crack and a bright stream of mana flew out. When the egg completely collapsed, he saw a black owl with yellow eyes looking at him. He called it an owl, which made this bird very angry. He called it a great horned owl, and the bird immediately calmed down. He thought that it looked a lot like a person. He began to pet the bird and thought that the impure mana seemed to have recently disappeared. Perhaps he could shelter it. He said with a small smile that from now on, his name is Owl. Sometime later at the gates of the academy, many people were passing inside and Oscar was among them. He thought that 5 years had already passed and he took a graduation present. I wonder if his problematic son will be able to safely graduate from the academy. He remembered how earlier he unhorsed Rowan and said that they would see each other in the alliance. Sienna told the vice captain that she would be going ahead. At this point, he thought that he had handed him over to the academy on his own initiative. He didn't have a guardian, so he should at least congratulate him on his graduation. However, where should he go? He noticed Arthur and thought that he already saw familiar faces. However, what was Sienna doing here? The teacher said that she was like a psychologist to him, and that this boy was able to open up to her. They had a trusting relationship, so as his guardian, she should be by his side. He said with a serious expression that this child would usher in a new era of magic. He would continue to do research with them even after he graduated. She said that this was his wish as the dean. He had no reason to consider himself his guardian. He said that after he graduated, he promised to let him call him grandfather. Sienna apologized for butting in and said that, however, he had once called her sister, so she was more suitable. Oscar looked at them and wondered, were they trying to claim guardianship? He couldn't possibly get that kind of support. He looked at his gift bag and thought that it looked like he was worrying for nothing. Sometime later, in the academy's assembly hall, the teacher said that he was asking the representative of the 266th course graduates and the best student to come up to the stage. The protagonist went up to the stage, took the item from his hands, and thanked him for the congratulations. People looked at him and asked if he was chosen as the best graduate just for his appearance. I wonder what kind of family he is from. They say he is from the Pobel family. He made a serious expression and said that he grew up in an orphanage since he was 3 years old. He was almost sacrificed to the dark cult of Rethel, but the Union saved him. Then he entered this academy to learn magic and in the future protect people from Rethel and Grave. That is why he devotes himself entirely to the good of ordinary people. He is grateful to the guardian who raised him, the director, the professor, the manager, and everyone who supported him, as well as his juniors and seniors. Without them, he would not be here, and he dedicates this award to all of them. Lazarus looked at him and asked, maybe he didn't need a guardian? He said with a small smile that it was a beautiful speech. After some time, the three of them were walking down the street and Lucas asked, why did he do that? He decided to take the entrance exam right away, right? He didn't even have time to leave the stage. The MC said with a small smile that he had planned it that way from the beginning. He did too, right? He said that he had just run away from his father's annoying instructions. By the way, he was looking for him. He said that he would visit him after the exam. He turned around, noticed that Sophie had a worried expression on her face, called her by name, and asked if she was okay. She immediately became indignant when he said that of course she wasn't. After all, she had been scolded in front of everyone. What is there to be happy about? I wonder if she will fail the exam? She was about to answer him something, but he put his hand on her shoulder and said that everything will be fine. They should join an alliance together. They will definitely appreciate her abilities. He knows her strength better than anyone, so she can be sure of herself. She agreed with a confused look, and he looked at the building next to her and said that they needed to register first. When it was his turn, Rowan put down his documents, said his name, and said that he was an academy graduate. This attracted the attention of the people around, and they said that he had heard that there were more than 100 applications for this exam. Even such young people are coming? If they are 15 years old, then everything is fine. However, they are still just children. The employee said that the best graduate of the academy was registered. With this coupon, he will pass the first exam. The people were surprised at what he heard and said that this was a different matter. They say he has magic, right? He really is a handsome young man, as they said. He turned around, called Lucas and Sophie, and asked if everything was okay. He agreed, pointed his finger to the side and said that they should move on. After some time in the waiting room for the first exam, he asked if the first stage was a free demonstration, right? She agreed and said that he needed to show what he can do best. The protagonist said with a smile that he just needed to do everything as usual. They will meet at the next stage. An employee came to them and called the best graduate of the academy and said that he should start when he was ready. After that, he went to the dueling ground, and in front of him stood a golem with a red gem in its torso. The start of the duel was announced, and he raised his hand with a calm expression on his face. The spectators were very surprised when he began to chant a very long spell. The monster in front of him fell apart, and the red gem remained floating in the air with the help of mana. He clenched his hand into a fist, causing the gem to crack, and the released energy threw the remains of the golem aside. The employee was shocked by what happened and thought that he imagined that he was using combat magic like ice arrows or fireballs. This was the first time he had seen such magic. He asked if they had ever seen something like this. Another person said that this was the first time he had seen it too. So this is what he is like. It seems like the rumors about him were not lying. He left the dueling grounds and was met by Lucas, who happily congratulated him on passing. He had done a great job. He thanked him and said that it was too early to congratulate him since it was only the first stage. He said that even if it was the first stage, he had still passed. He pointed to the side and asked, "By the way, can you see them?" Those were the same guys who were whispering about them at the reception. When they saw his magic, their faces turned white. If he gives it his all right away, then what should the rest of them do? They were all worried now. He could only sympathize with those who came after him, since his great performance was still ahead. MC looked to the side and noticed Sophie, who was clearly worried about something. He called her by name and said that he was also expecting a brilliant performance from her. They should join the alliance together. She smiled, agreed, and thanked him. An employee approached them, called her and said that she was the next candidate. She should rise when ready. She was still nervous and went in the right direction. Lucas called her and said that she should not be nervous and just do everything as usual. She turned around and looked at them with a smile. She went out to the duel site, stood in front of the golem, and took out her sword. The man looked at this and said that it looked like Pobol wanted to show her fencing, but her stance was already wrong. The guy who was standing next to him and taking the report turned to him and asked, "Is this true?" He said that he had crossed swords with representatives of this family more than once, and their technique was familiar to him. Their combo attacks are not inferior to illusionary technique. It is extremely difficult to fight them. Does he know why their swords seem so heavy? It's all because of depth. A sword should be an extension of the body, and their school attaches great importance to this. However, a sword grasped uncertainly like this lacks any depth. The guy asked, "Then what should I do?" The man said that I should always be one with the sword, but judging by this girl's stance, she should start with a basic grip. Rowan looked at the court with a slightly sad look and thought that he was saying everything right in theory. However, she is not one to be underestimated. She must show them her true power. Sophie got ready and ran very quickly towards her opponent. She channeled her energy into the blade of the sword and looked at this golem with a serious expression. She delivered many very fast blows with which she cut this monster. People who doubted her abilities were shocked by what happened, and the golem fell apart. She calmed down a little and put the sword back in its sheath with a small smile. The man conducting the exam with a shocked expression on his face said that she was accepted. She needed to confirm her participation and return. The shocked spectators said that he did not even have time to see her blows. How did she manage to connect the blows so quickly? Is it really that easy to cut mud golems with a sword? Of course it isn't. He'd seen the others perform. Even leaving a scratch was lucky. 6 hits in a row and not a single wasted move, and they say she took second place. She returned to her friends and called them by name, with a happy expression on her face. The protagonist praised her, and Lucas said that, although it seemed like she moved a little slower than usual, is she still nervous? She looked at him with a displeased expression, and he said with a smile that it was his turn now, so she should watch and learn. After that, he was called out. He began to walk out onto the dueling ground with a smile and said that he would warm up properly. He was allowed to begin and immediately jumped very high with his sword in his hands. He delivered a very strong blow and cut the golem in half. He looked at what was left of the monster with a smirk and said that he seemed to have overdone it. The man conducting the exam was shocked by this and thought that this was the 3rd time they should stop breaking everything. He was accepted too, after which they left from there. He entered the place with Lucas, and he said that he could settle in and make himself at home. If he needed anything, he could just say. MC MC thanked him and said that he was just racking his brains about where to live after graduation. He asked what kind of formalities were these. Of course, he would live with them. The father said that dinner was ready, so he should unpack his things and go downstairs. He agreed and said that he would come right away. After that, they sat down at the table and his attention was drawn to the carrots in the soup. Oscar said that if he didn't have enough, they would add food for him, so he should eat more. He agreed and thanked him for that. Lucas said that, in fact, he couldn't eat without meat. The father hit him on the head with a spoon and asked, at his age, he was still picky. They continued arguing with each other, and Rowan tried the soup and thought it was not tasty. They finished arguing and he asked if he liked the gift. He thanked him for it and said that it was exactly what he needed. He thought that although he already had 6 of these wallets, he said that he had guessed before that he was unusual, but he did not think that he would see magic of this level already at the first stage. He said that he was just doing what he does best. Oscar, with a calm expression on his face, said that then he had high hopes for the second exam as well. He agreed with a calm smile and said that they should watch it. A week later, the day of the second stage of the exam began. The organizers said that this time, many people passed to the second stage. It is not surprising that the test period was extended. There has not been such an influx of successful candidates for a long time, hasn't there? There are many adults among those who passed, but the number of graduates is especially pleasing. They are called the Shining Generation. They looked at the main character and said that this guy is the best of them. He stood on the dueling grounds with a calm expression and thought that they said the second round would consist of 3 duels. At least he managed to avoid a fight with Sophie and Lucas. He wondered who his opponent would be. He was surprised when he saw the man who had been standing next to him during the first round. He looked at him with a serious expression and asked if he knew him. He remembered how they had met and thought that he had heard him analyze Sophie's style during the first round. Of course, despite his confident comments, she had passed. He said that he was impressed by his opinion on merging with the sword and grip technique. He would like to learn something from him. The man reached for his sword, agreed with a smile, and said that it looked like he had just graduated from the academy. Then he would teach him a lesson right now. He should be grateful for this opportunity. As soon as they were allowed to begin the duel, he drew his sword from its sheath. MC looked at him with a serious expression and took the sword from him with telekinesis. The man was very surprised by this, pointed his finger at it, and asked what was this. The referee was watching what was happening and asked if he could continue. He thought with a displeased expression, this still very young guy dared to treat him like this. He agreed that he could continue and got into a fighting stance. He sent energy into his hand, which he was going to attack with, and thought that even without a weapon, he could do it with someone like him. He didn't have time to finish his thought because he launched his sword at his head and hit him with the hilt. The referee was a little surprised by what happened, declared him the winner, and said that he should go down and prepare for the next fight. He looked at his opponent with a kind smile and said that it was a good fight. A few days later, Rowan looked at his documents, put it in his jacket, and thought that finally the day of the final interview. There was only one step left before joining the alliance. However, after the second fight, he realized something. His attacks are always monotonous. He was used to defending himself and then counterattacking. He needed to be able to start a fight first and defend himself freely. In the alliance, he would probably have to learn something new. This is not true. Now he should be glad that he passed it all. All that was left was the interview. Owl flew to him and sat on his shoulder, and he asked with a joyful look, did she also come to congratulate him? He thought that since awakening from the stone, he continues to suddenly appear and then disappear again when he is alone. Another strange thing is that at such moments he stops feeling his mana, as if he is moving to another world. He asked where he comes from, or is he always nearby, just hiding his presence? He thought that so far he could not detect any special features. Who is he? He said that he should wait a little. When he becomes a member of the Alliance, he will definitely find a way to talk to him. Owl was happy about this, but noticed something and made a confused sound. The protagonist noticed this and asked what was wrong with him. The bird disappeared, and Sophie came up to him and said that she had looked everywhere for him. She waved her hand at him and said that the time had come. It was time for them to go to an interview. After some time, they came to the main building of the Union, where a large number of people had already gathered. He said with a surprised expression that compared to the first stage, there were much fewer people here. She said that they said that only about 50 people made it to the final competition. More than half of them were familiar faces, and all thanks to him. He said that it was thanks to him that they did not give up. She looked at Lucas, who was standing next to him, and asked why he was so tense. He said with a clearly worried look that he seemed calm. She gave him a handkerchief and said that sweat was pouring down his face. In normal circumstances, he does not behave like this, only in front of adults. MC said it was probably because of Vice Captain Oscar. He noticed a sad man walking down the stairs and said that some people take a long time to walk, while others come back almost immediately, as if they were giving up. What the hell is going on there? He looked at him and said he shouldn't be nervous, since he had been in school for 2 years longer. He got really angry about it and said it was very useful information. He said with a smile that they were friends, so they should support each other. They say they evaluate personal qualities first and foremost. Lucas put his hand on his shoulder and asked, so in his opinion, he was a bad person? At that moment, Rowan was called, and he said he had to go up. He went up the stairs and thought that the magic circle reacted to the visitor's mana, which was quite complex magic. He would like to take a closer look, but now was not the time. He entered a hall where many people were sitting at a long table. He thought that the interview would be conducted by the commanders or they had not arrived yet. He heard a quiet voice that called him to her. He looked around and saw a small stream of energy that led him to the door. He opened the door and was very surprised when he felt a huge amount of mana. An elf with a blindfold on her eyes called his name and said, "Welcome, he can go in." He looked at her and thought that a minute ago he heard the voice of the hostess. This is the strongest and purest mana that he felt. For some reason, it is very warm. Perhaps this is a being of the highest level that he will ever be able to reach. She pointed with her hand to the chairs nearby and said that he can sit down. They both sat down on the chair. He thanked her and thought that this was the Viceroy of the Union. Will he ever be able to take her place? He tried the tea and was surprised because of the taste. And she said with a smile that she saw he liked this tea. He agreed and said that it was very hot but invigorating. He had a special body structure. He thought that she even found out about his body constitution, which did not allow him to accumulate mana. She said that it was difficult to get here. He must have been lonely. The protagonist thought that he had never thought about it. He met people at school and believed that there were those he loved in his heart. She said that he had grown up into a wonderful young man. He thought that his efforts and abilities were recognized everywhere. But for the first time, someone looked at his past self. This was his first time. He started to cry, which confused him, and he wondered if it was because of the mana. She said with a small smile that even if his body was not like this, his mind was clear and pure. He was furious on the outside, but calm on the inside. Besides, he had an unusual child with him. She sent mana to his shoulder. Owl appeared in front of them, and he thought that this was the first time he saw him so quiet. He called his name, and she said that he was very cute, he should take care of him. He thought that this girl seemed to know everything, from his past to Owl's appearance. If he asked her about his vision, would he get an answer? He said that he wanted to ask something. She allowed it, and he asked if what he saw was really the future. The elf called his name and said that there was no definite future. If he saw the future, it ceased to be the future. Everything changed depending on how he defined it. He was free to believe in whatever he wanted. He thought that he realized that what he saw was not the future, but only a probability. In order for it to become reality, he had to work hard. People have always lived like this. It is impossible to grasp another reality. It is shrouded in fog. Now he feels that his path is determined. This is the path that has been given to him. He said that he would always keep this in his heart. The next day at Oscar's house, he said that he had cooked everything he liked, so he should eat more. We should celebrate his enrollment well. Lucas, looking a little displeased, said that a dish was not special if you added meat to it. Sophie and MC were sitting nearby, thanked him, and wished him bon appetit. She asked, however, where were they being sent? He stood nearby and said that he did not know that. The Viceroy must have already arranged an interview. She asked. The three of them would hardly go to the same place, right? He said with a thoughtful expression that only 10 people had passed the exam, including them. Among them, they were the only graduates of the Union School. There was no point in putting them all in one place. Honestly, he did not understand what he was talking about. At home, he was Lucas's father and their uncle, but outside, he was the vice captain, and they were members of the team. It's time for him to go. They'll meet at the Union. Lucas said it didn't matter to him where he went, as long as it didn't conflict with his beliefs. She asked, does he hate obeying his father that much? He said he doesn't care. Even within the service, they are close. She asked, then what's the reason? Is he afraid of him? He refused, and said that, however, it is necessary to separate personal life and work. Rowan looked at him and thought that he had matured a lot. He said that even if he was with him, they were not so close as to be able to tell the difference between a personal and a work relationship. He agreed with this and asked in order to divide their responsibilities. Maybe they should define ranks? After some time, they came together to the entrance of the Union administration, where an employee was checking their names on a list. He said that they should prepare everything necessary and they would conduct the training. He walked inside with a calm expression and thought that they had come to the administration to meet with Director Lazarus. However, they had never felt so important before. He suddenly felt that his position had changed. This was necessary. But where would they start? They opened the door to the building, where it was very hot, and were surprised by what they saw. The employee said that if they wanted to carry the title of the Sword and Book of the Union, they would need a new weapon. It was time to create a weapon that would suit them. The dwarf blacksmith Ulrich said that they should also say thank you. They can choose their favorite weapon from the display case. Lucas took a long sword and said it suited him. The blacksmith said that he should now be able to use the claymore with confidence. He started swinging the sword and smiled. He looked at it from the side and said that the attacks would be more effective with more weight and a sharper blade. With age, the length will need to be increased. so you will have to constantly get used to it. The dwarf called the next one and said, "Here is a long sword." Sophie took the sword and made a few quick swings with it. He said that fencing lacks destructive power. The advantages are balance and stability. You need to strengthen the muscles of the lower body. Maybe try using a sword and a shield at the same time. Now that she is in the alliance, she does not have to adhere to the norms of the family technique. She said that she will think about it. He agreed and said that he himself will do everything. She was surprised by what she heard, and he said that the next one, who is standing there indifferently. The protagonist came out to him and Ulrich asked, "Is he a magician?" Right? He agreed, and the blacksmith said that then it is necessary to make something suitable. He said that, however, first he would like to ask for something. He took out a shard of a sword and said that he had never held a weapon in his hands. He only controlled this shard of a sword with telekinesis. Will he be able to make a sword out of it? He asked to give it to him, took it, and said that it is a sword imbued with darkness and purified from mana. He is quite an inquisitive guy. It has already outlived its usefulness, but if you spend it, you can create about 12 sharp shards. He was happy about this, but the blacksmith immediately said that it was too early to rejoice. It sounds simple, but in fact, the process is quite difficult. The magic must be evenly distributed among each shard. If handled carelessly, the artifact can be destroyed. Only a magician of at least the 4th class can handle this. He asked with a slightly surprised expression, "Will a 4th class mage be enough? In that case, he will try on his own." Ulrich looked at him and thought that even the best graduate of the academy cannot do this. Either he overestimates himself, or he is really that capable. He will see what he can do. If something goes wrong, he will have to answer. He said that he should try not to make noise. MC, with a calm expression, directed his energy into this sword fragment and closed his eyes. He thought that he could feel the day Pauline revealed the truth to him. Thousands of threads of mana spread out to the sides. He directs the flow as if touching each thread and uses the unique magic of the director Lazarus. Early, the main thing is to evenly distribute the mana. After fixing the flows, you can complete the process. Ulrich was surprised by what he did and thought, is he really using 4th class magic? Cracks began to appear on the sword and he divided it into 10 parts. With the help of magic, he put it in the hands of the blacksmith, and he looked at it with a shocked look. He couldn't believe it and thought that the size and the amount of mana, everything was perfect. And this was done by a 15-year-old newbie. He said that he would do his best and see the job through to the end. After some time, Lazarus asked, "They have already finished the uniform and weapons, right? Now they will begin the real preparation." As they know, the alliance consists of 7 factions: the Council of Faith, Harmony, Honor, Stability, Practicality, Responsibility, and Freedom. Each of them will be assigned to one of them. The starting rank is Oz. It is possible to advance this to Runner, Seeker, Expert, or Master only through merit and accumulated skill. However, the world will not be lenient towards them. Their name will make them a target for enemies. Even those they help may call them the dogs of the kingdom behind their backs. But even so, they must be unwavering. Their job is to protect the peace of the kingdom and the safety of the citizens. They are the ones who pave the way for a better future. Now he will name the councils they were assigned to. A week later, the day of joining, Ulrich held out a bag and said that he should take this. He will like it. Can be combined with mana called Cheval. Rowan thought that he wanted to try it out quickly. He turned to Lucas, who with a very displeased look asked to kill him, and said that it was time for them to go. In the end, he got to the Council of Faith, where the deputy head is his father. He looked at him with a puzzled look and asked why he was so gloomy. They will be late for the interview. They should go already. He walked down the street with a displeased look and said that the gods have definitely turned their backs on him. He put his hand on his shoulder and said that he can consider this a chance to learn something new. They came to the hall of the Council of Faith, where people were discussing something and practicing sword fighting. He looked around and wondered, were these the senior members of the Council of Faith? They looked quite menacing. Someone noticed them and said that their newcomers had arrived. That person was Edgerin, the head of the Council of Faith, an expert. He said his name with a friendly smile and said that he was the head of the Council of Faith. They both bowed, stated their names and ranks. He said that they were welcome. They were just getting bored. He called the protagonist by name and said that he should show him what he was capable of. It was a shame that he was the only one who had not seen him in action. He was a little confused by this and wondered why he suddenly said that. He pointed his hand to the side and said that this was his opponent. Lucas was shocked by this and watched this silently. Oscar, with a calm expression on his face, formally introduced himself and said that he was glad to meet you. He asked with a shocked look, why do they have to fight? He looked at his son with a calm expression on his face and asked, does he think there is a choice? The two of them were left on the platform, and he said with a small smile that 5 years had passed. It had been a long time since he had seen his abilities. I wonder how much he had grown. MC looked at him and said that he was curious too. He wanted to see how far he could go. He kept smiling, closed his eyes, and asked if he was still confident in himself, right? He had to prove his strength in battle. He started to take out the sword from behind his back and said that he could begin. He took out the shards of the sword with telekinesis and said that he was confident in magic and the shards infused with magic. Oscar said with a small surprise that there were more shards. He agreed and said that he had been given a valuable gift for joining. He looked at it and said that it was immediately obvious that it was the work of Ulrich. Does his weapon have a name? He looked at it with a calm expression and said that it was Cheville. He looked at it and said that a knight who protects his master sounds noble, but the blades look fragile. Is he sure that their power matches his? He said that he himself wants to see how much power there is. Then why does he want to ask him for something? Can he let him have the first strike? The others were surprised by this, and Arian said that it sounded insolent. Oscar looked at him and thought that he couldn't sense his fear. Surely he has a plan. After all, he is smart. He pointed his sword at him and said that if he plays badly, he will not forgive it. Rowan looked at him and thought that he was using the Passau family's technique, using a claymore. He spent 5 long years fighting with Lucas, learning this technique. However, his aura was clearly different from his. He nodded and said that he was ready to begin then. He looked at him with a serious expression and launched several of his shards. He deflected all of the shards with one swing of his sword and said that it was a bit rough, but with a little practice, it would become a formidable weapon. He ran towards him very quickly and said that, however, he couldn't handle the power of his body yet. He looked at him with a surprised expression and thought that he was very close. He sent energy into his hand and thought that it was impossible to resist such a blow. Right now, all he could do was slow down the sword for a little while. He created several threads of mana that bound his body, which prevented him from finishing the attack. Lucas looked at what happened in surprise and said that it was as if the blade had caught on something. The protagonist used the time he gained and jumped back from it. He thought that he had changed the load, friction force, and surface tension to hold it. If he adjusted the trajectory and airflow, he might even be able to direct Cheville himself. Oscar looked at the sword fragments flying nearby with a serious expression and thought that this was not bad. The growth was noticeable. However, his sword could not be stopped with such tricks. He broke free from the grip and jumped towards him, raising his sword behind his back. When he struck with his sword, he aimed his weapon and blocked this attack. He was surprised by what happened and said that this is how it is. It was unremarkable in appearance, but it proved its usefulness. He began to attack Cheville with separate parts from different sides, and he was forced to repel his attacks. MC looked at this and thought that his strength was still not enough to completely restrain him. This is an opponent not at his level. It was easy to gather the absent-minded Cheville back, but the problem is different. There is nowhere else to retreat. He stopped, created a fireball, and thought that this means he will have to go straight ahead. He released a fireball, and Oscar, with a surprised expression on his face, blocked it with his sword. What happened surprised everyone who was watching what was happening. Because of this attack, his mustache was burnt, and he apologized for it. He was going to offer to start over but did not finish because Ederin started laughing. He praised him with a wide smile and asked if he burned the deputy's mustache on the very first day. The rest of the spectators also started laughing and said that now he is half mustachioed. No other way. This newbie is not so bad. The rumors were true. He lacks combat experience. Weakening the force of the blow can be regarded as politeness. The head of the council called Roan and asked if he would like to talk. He said with an interested look that he had interesting moves with both magic and shards. He started putting Cheville back into the bag and asked if he really thought so. He asked what he thought of the vice-captain's skills. He said that despite his smooth movements, each of his attacks was incredibly powerful. Ederin said that he was, however, quite deft at blocking and dodging. He said with a slightly upset look that he had been in too much of a hurry. That was an oversight on his part. He looked at him with a thoughtful look and said that he had learned something after all. In any case, the praise was deserved. The ability to adapt to the situation is especially valued in the Council of Faith. He should not rush. He still had a lot to learn. However, he already had the necessary form. He turned around and called Sienna, who was standing next to him, and said that she should help him unlock his potential and guide him. She bowed and said that it would be done. He turned around and said great, he was dealt with, and the next one. He looked at Lucas and said with a small smile that he knew just the right candidate. He pointed at Oscar, who introduced himself again with a calm expression. He was very unhappy about this and mentally asked for mercy. After a while, Sienna said that before moving on to personal training, it was worth discussing the recent fight. She called him by name and said that he was good at magic, but in close combat, he clearly had problems. If he did not learn to keep his distance, he would lose the advantage. The protagonist, with a worried look, thought that she was right. The stronger the opponent, the more dangerous it was to give him space. She took out her daggers and said that at first he should just watch. It was important to use your legs correctly. She showed him her fighting style, and he, with an interested look, thought that she controlled her breathing and at the same time moved like that. light steps. Even in a training fight, she naturally goes against the flow of mana. This cannot be learned in one day. She stopped and said that if he tried to repeat it now, his body would not adapt. He should not rush. Everything would come with practice. She was surprised when she looked at him and noticed that he was gathering energy around himself. He closed his eyes, began to remember the last fight, and thought that he should remember his movements in the fight. He imagined his attacks and thought that because of the huge claymore, his attacks go in a wide arc. If you calculate the distance correctly, you can dodge. However, when attacking, you need to act differently. The angle at which the toes are pointed can decide the outcome of the battle. So far, this is not much different from his usual approach. However, when controlling the enemy's movements with magic, then the difference in magical power will decide the outcome. However, his magical skills are stagnant. In an alliance, the opponents will be stronger than him, and he will have to put up with it. He opened his eyes and thought that there is no point in imitating, because they have different starting points. She said that it seems he realized something. He looked at her and said that it wasn't for him. Even if he could do it once, it didn't mean he could do it all the time. He would never be like her. Sienna asked if he had already given up, so she had overestimated him. She showed him a normal move. He was the one who had broken through the fabric of time, so she was asking for forgiveness, but it sounded like normal self-pity. He looked at his hand, which was emitting a small amount of mana, and thought that he shouldn't blame his weak magic. He should think about how he could use it. What if he directed the airflow in advance, so that it would help him move, or prevent the enemy from entering his area by using an imaginary barrier? He thought with a surprised expression that this was it.